In a cave settlement, a group of people gathers as a warrior encourages a priestess and a little girl to cooperate, pushing the girl's father to take action about their behavior. Meanwhile, a young man sits at his computer, advising them to try their hardest, as he typically does. This tale explains how he transformed into a god of fate, rescued some villagers, and was rescued by them in return. 1 month prior, the unshaven young man was eating at his parents' house while his mother questioned if he'd secured employment yet. She remarks that his father won't be able to work indefinitely, and although they're coping for now, she's concerned about his future plans if they pass away. While eating, he lowers his spoon, slams the table in frustration, and snaps at his mother that he's aware of his situation, rudely telling her to be quiet. She scolds him for his inactivity, but he silently wishes she'd hold off on the lecture until after his meal, regretting his early wake-up. Abruptly he stands, declares he's lost his appetite, and stomps off, leaving his food untouched. He knows his behavior is terrible. After high school he attended and completed a standard college that accepted almost anyone, but his troubles started afterward. Though his college years weren't terrible, the real issue emerged later. Even before finishing school, he put effort into finding a job, yet every company he applied to turned him down. Over time, his drive faded as rejections piled up while his peers moved forward in life. Years slipped by, and a full decade passed since he graduated. His mother pointed out how their acquaintances had advanced while he stayed a NEET, now over 30, though he was already conscious of his stagnation compared to his classmates' steady jobs and families. His thoughts halt midway up the stairs when the doorbell chimes. Through the intercom, he spots a delivery man with a package bearing an odd logo and chooses to open the door himself. His mother frets that he spent money he doesn't have, but he insists it could be a prize he won. To escape his guilt over unemployment, he's been entering every online raffle he finds. Sometimes he wins items, including adult products, which he grabs quickly so his parents won't notice. Outside, he signs for the package, catching the courier's surprised expression, likely from seeing a man home midweek, and notes his neighbor's increasingly obvious stares, which he's grown used to. His mother makes a sharp remark as he takes the package. Alone in his room, he opens the box to reveal a blank video game CD labeled The Village of Fate. He suspects it's an alpha test, and a note confirms he's been selected to try a groundbreaking game with lifelike characters, the first of its kind. As the god of fate, he'll guide villagers daily to build their community, learning more rules as he goes. Yoshia finds this setup careless and assumes it's a village-building game. The note forbids sharing game details with others or posting online, threatening to revoke his access and reclaim the game that he disobeys. He's shocked the company didn't require a contract and wonders how they detect online leaks. The note instructs him to play while always connected to the internet, cautioning that he can't play again if his village is destroyed. Since it autosaves, reverting to an earlier point isn't an option. Yoshia finds these rules tough and questions their feasibility. Unsure whether to install it, he searches online but finds no trace of the game. Worried about viruses, he opts to test it on his old computer, suspecting it might be a low-quality game or a hoax, given how much time he spends gaming and browsing online. Yoshia reluctantly agrees to try the game, intending to share his thoughts online if it turns out to be a trick. The game begins with a basic title screen that he finds unimpressive, but when he presses enter, his eyes widen in awe. He watches a cart racing through a forest with stunning graphics he's never seen before. A rugged, scared warrior steers the cart, frantically attempting to escape two monsters chasing him on boars. Yoshio notices this medieval fantasy scene unfold, with the game revealing a frightened family inside the cart. The family cowers in terror as a priestess grips her Bible, praying to the god of fate for safety. One monster slashes at the cart's side, making them scream as the attack persists. Another monster races ahead, and Yoshia sees they're targeting the horses. The warrior spots this, pulls out his sword, and blocks the creature's strike, but the second monster seizes the moment to lunge at the horses. Before it can hit, the priestess's Bible glows brilliantly, dazzling the monsters and forcing them back. The warrior then checks on the passengers, who all smile, relieved to be out of danger. Seeing this, Yoshia figures the game has officially started and wonders what to do next. When he clicks on the warrior, a character profile appears, introducing a 26-year-old warrior monk named Gams, the older brother of Kem, a 19-year-old priestess of the god of fate. Yoshio notes she doesn't resemble her brother at all and marvels at the game's origins, admiring its incredible graphics. He decides to explore later and examines the other characters' profiles instead. The remaining three are family. Russ, a 33-year-old ex-general store owner, his tough 30-year-old wife Lee, and their surprisingly grown-up 7-year-old daughter Carol. Together with the siblings, they form the game's core cast. Though Yoshio enjoys watching, he's still unclear on how to play. Just then, a chime alerts him that the characters are speaking through text dialogue. Gans kneels, expressing regret for not protecting their village, barely saving them in time. Russ tells him to get up, saying it's a miracle they escaped the monster swarm. Carol asks about the bright flash, calling the warrior her big brother. Kem responds sharply, reminding her Gams is her actual brother. Yoshio observes Kem's brother obsession and pegs the siblings as the main focus. Gams scolds his sister for acting immature. Carol jumps in, teasing them both, and Yoshio appreciates the detailed backstories and traits, thinking it might be a solid game. Layla in to stop the girls, asking about the earlier light. Kem explains it poured from her Bible. Another chime tells Yoshio he'll act as their god, guiding the village to thrive. He can't control them directly but can send a daily prophecy via the Bible, one page at a time, and the game urges him to test it. Yoshio is intrigued by this setup. He's amazed he can write commands freely instead of picking from a list, but sets that aside for now, assuming they'll only follow basic orders. After some effort, he proudly crafts a divine command, claiming if the AI grasps even a fraction of it, he'll call it a godly game. He hits enter to see how this advanced tech handles it. The Bible glows again, and a shocked Kem opens it, then drops to her knees in gratitude. God performs an incredible miracle, prompting her to tell everyone she's received a message from the God of Fate. She shows the Bible to the surprised men, making Russ weep with passion. His wife and daughter say sorry for not knowing how to read, and since Gams can only read a little, he asks his sister to speak the message out loud. Seeing everyone's eager looks, she gets ready to read, presenting herself as the God of Fate. Yoshio claims he drove the monsters away with his miracle, promising to give them one miracle each day from now on. Yoshio announces that he wants them to obey his messages and live well. He orders them to chop down trees and make a safe place to stay. As his instructions are read out loud, Yoshio is shocked and pushes his chair back. Layla is thrilled to have God looking after their happiness, and Russ is grateful for his kindness in getting them one command daily. The man is amazed that the characters grasp everything he wrote, stunned as he says the game's technology is far beyond its time, calling it truly impressive. Yoshio is astonished to watch the characters react to his words, though he wonders if they're just following a preset pattern. He's still curious about what the game really is. After getting the message, Kem tells the group to split up and cut some trees. Russ points out that even if they cut the trees, they can't use them as wood right away. They need to process and dry them first. Both the priestess and Yoshio are caught off guard by this, with Yoshio realizing the game's rules are a bit more detailed. Russ explains that fresh wood has to dry out before becoming usable timber, or it might twist. The priestess and Neat confess they didn't know this. Russ figures that God, with his greater wisdom, has his own reasons and suggests they cut and gather the trees first, earning the deity's thanks. He grabs tools from the wagon, and while he and Gams chop trees, the girls search the area for food. Yoshio discovers he can use his mouse to scroll and zoom out from the scene. Looking at the narrow strip of visible land on the escape path, Yoshio confirms the view grows as the characters explore new areas. He wonders how time works in the game, questioning if it might run in real time, though he thinks that'd be impossible to create. Another note appears, explaining that as the God of Fate, he can spend fate points to cause miracles. These points come from how much the villagers feel they owe him and are shown on the screen. In the top right corner, his fate points are at 97. The more the villagers appreciate him, the higher his points will climb, and adding more residents will boost them further. As his points rise with the villagers' gratitude for his predictions, he realizes they'll shift depending on what he prophesies. The note finishes by saying that if the village thrives and grows, the miracle's impact will get stronger. Yoshio checks his miracles tab, starting with options like bringing helpful visitors, such as a traveling doctor or hunters, or reuniting with escaped villagers. Seeing he can shape people's fates, he also spots weather controls, but notices his points are low, wondering what to pick. Yoshio decides to listen to the villagers and choose based on that. Overhearing Roos and Gans as they cut trees, the shopkeeper starts chatting, giving praise to the God of Fate. Fate chats about the weather and chemistry, but gets only short one-word replies. Seeing no real talk will happen, he shifts to the girls gathering food. When Kem asks, Layla says they packed enough supplies for 2 weeks. The priestess wishes for a steady food source by then, and Yoshio thinks about relying on a peddler's visits to buy food. He figures that getting food themselves would mean heading to the mountain, and he grows curious about what they might find there. Yoshio debates sending Gams to scout the next day but worries about splitting up their only fighter. If he's aiming to win the game smartly, he could send the less useful Carol to check the area. Watching her pick mushrooms, he realizes that a reckless move could wipe them all out, and that guilt would haunt him. Scanning the Miracles tab again, he spots an option to summon familiars. He thinks one could expand the map's visible range and help them out. He finds over 50 familiar types, like slimes and unicorns, but decides a bird would work best for scouting. Still, their costs are high, way more points than he has. Even basic ones like cats or dogs are out of reach. All he can afford is a chick. Though it might lay eggs for food, Yoshio grumbles it's useless for scouting, frustrated that he's stuck with no way to earn more points. A chime interrupts, revealing another way to boost his fate points, a payment system. The game's instructions welcome him to microtransactions. For every 1,000 yen he spends, he'll get 10 points. Yoshio rubs his head, annoyed that the game uses such a irritating setup. While he expects payment systems in games, he's shocked to see it in an alpha test version. Even with his current points too low for a familiar, Yoshio calculates that 20,000 yen could snag in the cat or small dog. Beyond familiars, extra points could ease the villagers' lives. He digs through a drawer, finding over 10,000 yen in savings. He figures selling his books and games could bring in more cash, and he considers auctioning off unopened raffle prizes too. Later that night, he ponders his options while checking on the villagers. They're settling into the wagon to sleep. Though it's just 9 o'clock, Carol says goodnight to Gams, with Kem chiming in too. Gans stays outside by the fire. Russ urges him to rest, but Gans insists someone must keep watch since a monster could strike any time. The father comforts him, pointing out they've seen God's miracles firsthand. The father adds that prophecies prove the God of fate is guarding them. Russ argues monsters won't dare come near with God's power, but Gans isn't convinced. Yoshio quietly apologizes to them, wishing he had that kind of strength. He sighs, noting they might think they're totally safe because God can do anything, and wonders if he should admit he's not all-powerful. Yoshio hesitates, knowing his powers have limits. He fears revealing this might lower their gratitude, cutting off his point gains from their thanks. Pushing the issue aside, he dives into researching wood manufacturing online. He muses about how long it's been since he last studied something seriously, having spent years casually watching videos or messing around on Reddit instead. Yoshio reflects that if he had spent his wasted time on other activities, he might have offered the villagers better guidance, and if he hadn't been so disorganized from the start, he could have had the funds to boost his fate points. He mentions that the villagers might have enjoyed a calmer life if they'd had a regular worker as their player instead of him. With a sigh, he questions why he's dwelling on past regrets over a game, which is supposed to be fun. Glancing at his messy reflection in the window, he clutches his side in discomfort. He lifts his shirt to reveal a deep abdominal scar, explaining that it aches in cold weather. This triggers a painful memory of how he got it. A creepy stalker was bothering his little sister, so Yoshio confronted the boy and warned him to back off. When the boy didn't reply, Yoshio grabbed his collar, insisting he promised to leave her alone. The boy mumbled something unclear and then, to Yoshio's shock, stabbed him in the stomach with a switchblade as his sister screamed. The stalker pulled the knife out, grinning wildly as Yoshio collapsed. In a panic, Yoshio shouted for help and fled, blood dripping behind him, leaving his sister there. He recalls this as the turning point, after which nothing went right no matter how hard he tried. Shaking off these memories, he notes he's back at his computer, surrounded by clutter, and chooses to dive deeper into gaming. Yoshio stares at his computer screen with a sad look, accepting that he's run out of options as the sun comes up. The bright light streaming through his window wakes him, and he sees it's already morning after staying up all night studying wood manufacturing. He fell asleep without noticing and checks the time, realizing at 5:07 that it's been ages since he last woke up so early. Back at his computer, he looks at the villagers and sees they're already awake, with Russ and Gams getting some logs ready. Meanwhile, Kim is praying and Layla and her daughter are gathering herbs. It hits him that this game runs in real time, and he starts thinking about what prophecy to share today. His godly ideas stop when his stomach rumbles, reminding him he skipped dinner last night because he was so into the game and ate all his room snacks. Heading downstairs, he hopes there's food left in the fridge but stops short when he hears voices behind the closed kitchen door. His sister asks their mom for soy sauce, and he presses himself against the wall, nervous, realizing it's breakfast time. His dad mentions he'll likely have overtime today, and his sister tells him not to push too hard. Yoshio hasn't talked to his younger sister since the stalker incident or to his dad since their big fight about him finding a job. He pictures himself walking into the kitchen and asking for breakfast, but quickly dismisses it as ridiculous since everyone's eating to fuel their busy day, and he, jobless, feels he can't face them. Feeling down, he slips back to his room and decides to do some muscle training, a habit he picked up after the incident to overcome his fear and weakness by getting stronger. A chime pulls his focus back to the village of fate, where Roos catches his eye again. Yoshio advises his daughter not to push herself too hard, but she insists on continuing her work, happy to contribute. He asks her to reach out if she needs assistance or runs into trouble, and she cheerfully agrees. Watching this, Yoshio reflects that the villagers in the game seem to live more vibrantly than he does. Feeling down, he faces the monitor and cautions them not to rely too heavily on a flawed god. At that moment, the Bible glows as a new oracle arrives, and Kem excitedly shares the news with everyone. Kem announces to the gathered villagers that a prophecy has come from the god of fate. Standing before them, she recites it aloud. Yoshio explains that he's lost half his power, now limited to granting small miracles, and keeping watch over them as before. He urges his loyal followers to unite with others nearby to endure, offering them his blessing. A quiet settles over the group as they absorb this latest prophecy, while Yoshio, troubled, hides his face in his hand, lost in thought. Yoshio wonders if the villagers might lose faith in a god who offers excuses, thinking he should have come up with a stronger explanation. Kem interrupts his gloom, marveling at how wonderful it is that God still watches over them. To his amazement, Roos praises him for the blessing and suggests his weakened state might stem from fighting demons. Roos decides they can't keep leaning on God and vows to bolster their defenses. Yoshio is stunned that they turned his pessimistic words into something positive. Noticing his fate points have risen to 110, Yoshio realizes the prophecy's content determines how many points he earns. Yet with only 13 points gained in a day, he doubts he can trigger a useful miracle even weekly, leaving the villagers' lives unchanged. Overhearing the girls, he catches Kem saying it's odd to sleep in wagon, and they need a wall or fence against monsters, while Lyle laments their lack of salt. Yoshio knows he could ease some fears with more points. If Yoshio had more fate points, he could erase some of their worries, but he hesitates to spend them. His alternative is earning points through the payment system, so he's listed all his unopened raffle prizes for auction, aiming for 20 to 30,000 yen. Glancing at his comics and old games, he figures he could sell them at a used bookstore for fast cash. The catch is that selling them means leaving the house, something he hasn't done, beyond late nights, in about 2 years. While debating his next move, Yoshio focuses on the game, realizing it'd be a shame to lose it entirely if the villagers were completely defeated. With no other options, the young man resolves to step outside. As he dresses and checks the mirror, he sees he hasn't gained much weight, but his clothes feel snug. As a child, he imagined his 30s as a time of sophistication, assuming he'd naturally grow into a polished adult, far from what he sees now. Staring at the weary, unkempt man in the mirror, Yoshio grows anxious and considers delaying his outing, deciding he'll go tomorrow if he feels up to it. Sitting back at the monitor, he watches Carol merrily walking down a path with sticks in her arms. She stumbles over a rock, falling flat and scattering the sticks everywhere. Yoshio watches, startled but helpless, as Carol clutches her scraped knee. Undaunted, she brushes away her tears and gathers the sticks again. Yoshio bravely continues her march back to the cart, catching the surprised Yoshio off guard as he scans for the other villagers. He spots Gams and Ruse hauling logs while the girls wash clothes in the chilly weather. Understanding that things have changed since yesterday, determined to give his all, he heads toward the door, leading his shocked mother in the hallway. She's puzzled to see him leaving as it's unusual and asks what's happening. But he just says he'll return soon before grabbing his bike. Yoshio passes by his stunned neighbors, ignoring their stares and whispers as he rides off. Feeling overwhelmed by self-hatred and guilt, Yoshio imagines his neighbors mocking him for being jobless despite his age. Ashamed, he shuts his eyes, weighed down by his emotions, but then recalls the villager's spirit, pushing his negative thoughts away. He peels faster to the bookstore, where he sells his games and books, then browses the shelves for anything useful. His neighbor's judgmental looks and words echo in his mind, but he presses on, determined to move forward. At the bookstore, Yoshio comes across several isekai manga, observing how characters in those stories thank others for sharing modern knowledge. He thinks this could apply to his game, though the context differs, but he's too broke to buy even a cheap book costing a few hundred yen. Riding home, he passes a cake shop, remembering old visits there with his family. The past feels distant as he focuses on his current goal. Inside the cake shop, the vendor greets him warmly, and as Yoshio eyes the displays, he recalls choosing treats with his sister as kids. Keeping his head down, he orders 4 puddings, feeling it's a small indulgence, then leaves. Back home, he finds his mother in the living room and gives her the pudding bag. She's grateful for the unexpected gift, and Yoshio shyly explains he got enough for everyone before heading upstairs. In his room, Yoshio questions why he's embarrassed, thinking a worthless person shouldn't feel good about one small act. Downcast, he stares at the sky, wondering aloud what he's doing with his life at this age after selling his stuff. He earned 20,000 yen, boosting his fate points to 310, and watches the villagers share a meal by the campfire, pondering what miracle to perform. The day before, he discovered a system letting him revisit past events, sparking his curiosity. Yoshio finds a feature to review villagers' past talks cool, but hesitates, feeling it's like spying. Wanting to fulfill their wishes, he gives in and tests it, listening to a chat the girls had while he was away. As they wash clothes, they praise the nice weather and the river's convenience near camp. Layla mentions wanting a bath but worries about monster attacks while undressed, sparking a lighthearted exchange. Layla says she's fine with villagers seeing her since her husband and daughter don't mind, and Gams wouldn't care. But when Carol agrees about Gams, Kem sharply disagrees. She insists her calm brother is still a man, showing her strong sibling attachment. Yoshio decides Layla and Carol aren't concerns, but Kem's brother complex seems deeper than he thought. The talk stays casual until Layla brings up a past monster attack, shifting the mood. Layla recalls a monster swarm that devastated the village, and Kem adds it was a big place with stone walls and multiple hunters besides Gams. Despite their defenses, many died when the monsters overran them. Curious, Yoshio, as the god of fate, digs deeper into the girls' conversation logs for more details. The village once housed hundreds, but a massive monster raid overwhelmed it. They fought hard for a while, but the losses were heavy, leaving a lasting mark on the survivors. In the game, the village was eventually overwhelmed, forcing Yoshio and others to flee with some villagers on horse wagons. By the time the villagers noticed the danger, only they were left, though they escaped the monsters and headed into the forest. Their horse wagon got damaged during the escape, making long-distance travel tough. With a better grasp of the game's world, Yoshio now sees why the story includes the escaped villagers reuniting. Watching the screen, he vows to bring them all back together. Later, his mother calls him downstairs for dinner, interrupting his game. He's shocked to find his emotionless father at the kitchen table so early. Since his father became distant, they only meet a few times a month, exchanging brief, uninterested words like "how's it going?" or "do what you want." This tense relationship started after a major argument, and calling his father polite wouldn't be quite right. It'd be more true to say his father has no interest in Yoshio. He asks if his sister Saki is working late, and his mother says yes. Unlike Yoshio, Saki has done well, landing a job in her dream industry and seeming happy, even with overtime. Yoshio's mother then chats about her day, mentioning she got handmade sukamana from a neighbor named Okiku. She offers some to try and shares how she met the woman. Okiku, an older landlady, lives in a large old house nearby. When Yoshio was younger, he'd play there with a friend, and Okiku would give them candy. His family's home isn't as fancy as Okiku's, but it's a decent-sized house with a garden. Yoshio can stay there as a NEET because his father earns a good living. After thanking his mother for dinner, Yoshio quickly gets up to leave. He takes his plates to the sink, and his mother tells him to grab a pudding, asking if his father wants one too. She explains that Saki bought them. His father's eyes open at this, and Yoshio glances at him anxiously until he takes the pudding. Back in his room, pudding eaten, Yoshio returns to the game. He sees everyone but Gams has gone to the horse wagon. As the warrior sits alone by the campfire, he notes that Gam's night watch efforts are greatly valued. Gams quietly tends the fire with a stick, and Yoshio thinks he's a reliable guy, his calm presence reminding him of his father. Gams is the only fighter among the villagers. Russ and his family are useless in a fight, and while Kem can heal with magic, she's not built for combat. Turning from the screen, Yoshio says out loud that both he and the villagers rely on Gams, wishing he had more help. He knows he can use fate points to summon people to the village, but calling one person takes a lot of points. There's a cheaper option to summon someone random, though it's risky, like a gamble. If luck's against him, a criminal could appear and bring chaos. He also knows getting addicted to something like pay-to-win mechanics is a dangerous trap he should avoid. Plus, Yoshio really wants a familiar too, feeling like he's missing something. Yoshio scratches his head, frustrated by how anxious a simple game makes him, and decides he'll think it over tomorrow since he's worn out from his first outing in ages. He says sorry to Gams, heads to bed, and wishes the villagers good night, only to jump when an alarm blares from the game. Shocked, he sees an attack warning flash on the screen, and a calm but firm Gams shouts for everyone to get up before the assault starts, rousing the other villagers. From a horse wagon, the group watches him through flapping cloth as he faces the woods, back to them, preparing his weapons. He grips his dagger and carefully pulls his long sword from the scabbard on his back, announcing without looking that he senses monsters. The warrior orders Kim to guard everyone and stay by the wagon no matter what, while a scared Russ tells Layla and Carol to remain inside because it's risky. The little girl then asks Gams about his condition. As the warrior gears up to battle solo, Sem insists she'll join him, but her brother shuts it down, explaining her healing magic is all she has and he needs her to look after the others. Holding back tears, she grudgingly agrees while a frantic Yoshio shouts at the monitor, clutching it tightly, unable to see the monsters in the dark. Suddenly, two shadowy figures burst from the bushes near the fire, growling fiercely at Gams. The god of fate watches as the game labels them black dogs. Stray dogs turn into savage, meat-eating beasts with superior strength, and in rare cases, poisonous fangs. Yoshio frets over this, pointing out that even though Gams is tough, he's facing two alone. Gams locks eyes with the approaching monsters, crossing his blades as they snarl and close in, while Yoshio starts hoping aloud that Gams pulls through. Then realizing he's a god, Yoshio grabs his mace, hunting for a miracle to use as Gams stares down the beasts. The black dogs lunge together, trying to hit him from both sides, but with perfect timing, the skilled warrior swings both swords, striking them simultaneously. They collapse a short distance away, whimpering their last before dying, and Gams, stern-faced, steps toward his victory. He nudges one creature's paw with a kick to ensure it's dead, then drives his long sword into the fallen dog to confirm it. Yoshio cheers loudly, calling the warrior awesome as he stares at the screen, thrilled. Sem walks up to her big brother, asking if he's alright, but her smile fades to worry when Gams says sorry and admits he'll rely on her now, right before he collapses, leaving her stunned. Seeing this, she cries out for her big brother as he lies still, drenched in sweat. Yoshio grabs the screen with both hands, his face twisted in shock and fear for Gams' fate, calling it a perfect win despite the collapse. Kem kneels, cradling her unconscious brother's head in her lap, while Rus hurries to assist. The warrior's face twists in pain, soaked in sweat, as the god of fate watches, helpless, over the village's key fighter. Kem clutches her brother's lifeless body, shouting at him to snap out of it as she feels his warmth fade, screaming in desperation. Shocked, Yoshio seizes the monitor and shouts at it, trying to understand what's happening with Gams. Rus nears the frantic priestess, urging her to relax, and takes her brother's arm, detecting a faint pulse but noticing his body growing colder and his face turning pale. Looking closer at the arm, he spots a deep wound. Alarmed by the wound's dark hue, Rus glances at the black dog Gams had stabbed, realizing it bit him and suspecting its venomous fangs. He asks Kem if she knows any antidote spells. Hearing this, Yoshio clings to hope, remembering the priestess's healing abilities might save Gams, but that hope fades when she sadly admits she hasn't mastered antidote magic yet, and hurriedly asks Rus if he has anything helpful. Rus, once a shopkeeper, looks down and says sorry, explaining they lack any antidote potions in their bags. Carol, clinging to her mother's skirt, watches in terror, grasping the grim situation. Kem trembles with grief and fear, holding her brother tightly, begging him not to go. She lifts her eyes skyward, pleading with God to spare him, promising anything in return as tears pour down her face. The god of fate, shaken, ponders his next move, knowing Gams' death would end everything and wondering if he can act. Seeing the villagers' distress, he resolves to intervene, recalling his divine power. He pushes fear aside, steps forward boldly, and announces that only a miracle can fix this. Reflecting on the game's rules, he remembers a way to reverse this dire moment and opens the miracles menu. He scans the options, dismissing useless ones like a peddler or hunters, until he finds traveling doctor arrives. Noting its high 300-point cost, but sure it includes an antidote, he rushes to select it. He shouts that even triggering it doesn't promise instant results, yet he's forced to bet on it. The late-night outburst startles his mother downstairs. His mother calls up to him, but Yoshio, engrossed, barely notices, wondering if the doctor appearing now would seem too perfect. Glancing at his clock, he sees it's past midnight, types a command, and waits for the Kem's outcome. Kem still grips her brother, urging him to respond, when a voice sounds behind her. A hooded figure steps from the woods across the fire. A leather bag hangs at the figure's side, his face set with purpose. Kem, still holding her brother, demands to know who he is. Rus, anxious, grabs Gams' spare blade, aiming it at the stranger as the family watches fearfully. The man calms them, introducing himself as a traveling doctor. While Russ stays wary, the girls exchange doubtful looks, and Yoshio thinks their suspicion of this timely arrival makes sense. With a sly smile, Yoshio hits the enter key, and the Bible beside Kem springs open, shining brightly once more. Its pages flip on their own until they land on the latest prophecy from the god of fate. Reading the glowing words, the stunned priestess can't stop her tears and lifts her head to the sky, shouting her deep thanks to the deity before hugging her brother tightly again. Russ watches this unfold, and the doctor announces that this was indeed the correct spot after all. He requests permission to examine Gams, and the surprised shopkeeper reluctantly agrees. The doctor steps forward and stands over Gams and his sister, who are still clinging to each other. Kem lowers her eyes and pleads with the doctor to save him, while Carol prays for his well-being. Inspecting the festering wound caused by the black dog, the doctor quickly identifies the problem. He opens his bag, takes out a vial, and pours some of its liquid into Gam's mouth, then spills the rest onto the open sore. The warrior's face twists in agony as he reacts to the remedy, but it soon calms as the cure works, and color begins to return. Color flushes back to his cheeks, and the villagers cheer at this turn of events. Yoshio breathes a sigh of relief and leans back in his chair, expressing his happiness that the miracle succeeded and the doctor arrived just in time. He mentions needing to thank the long-haired physician, though he's uncertain about their gender. Kem keeps holding her brother in comfort, while Russ grabs the Bible and reads its message aloud. The god of fate had written that he used his power to lead the doctor to them, stating that Gans isn't meant to join him yet and will recover. He promises his kindness to the courageous warrior and adds that challenges will persist from now on, but assures him he's watching over them. Yoshio attempts to phrase it in a grand, godly tone but doubts if it sounds right, while the young man sighs in relief as Russ interprets it as intended. Speaking to the group, he praises their efforts and says he can only watch from here on. The next morning, Layla and Carol venture into the forest to pick berries. The little girl wonders if Gams will improve after eating them, and her mother cheerfully confirms he will. Meanwhile, an anxious Russ takes over Gans' guard duties in the forest, gripping his sword and turning in every direction, vowing to protect everyone now. He's startled by rustling in the nearby bushes and stumbles backward, only to see a white rabbit hop out and scamper off. Back at camp, Sem kneels beside her resting brother as the doctor grinds herbs with a mortar. After a moment of doubt, the priestess asks him why he came to their area. The physician explains that his family has been healers for generations and that this place, known as the Forbidden Forest, is full of both monsters and plentiful herbs. The night before, as he finished collecting herbs and was about to set up camp, he noticed a beam of light in the forest. Puzzled by the odd sight, he wasn't sure whether to investigate, but a restless feeling in his chest pushed him to follow the light. Kem faithfully declares that it was divine guidance. It must have been a higher power guiding them, and the physician admits that, despite prioritizing Mother Nature and not following any specific deity, last night's event might truly have been a divine intervention. Yoshio folds his arms, piecing together that the doctor is agnostic, acknowledging gods might exist but not fully committing to belief, then yawns from tiredness. Ken inquires if the doctor plans to leave soon, but he explains that even though the toughest part is over, he's not ready to lead his patient just yet. The doctor assures Kem he can stay a little longer and asks if they'd mind him remaining with them. Kem's expression lights up, warmly inviting him to stay as long as he wants, though she mentions they currently lack a proper home and wonders if he's fine with that. Yoshio watches with quiet relief, grateful they were saved and pleased the doctor will stay in the village. He considers the cramped living situation, noting the wagon is already full, meaning adding the doctor would force someone to sleep outside. Even though they survive this time, Yoshio knows it's only a brief break from danger. He realizes that another attack by black dogs could wipe them out completely. Although Gams was rescued, he'll likely be unable to move well for days, and Rose isn't strong enough to fill his role. Yoshio decides they need a secure place to live and ponders how to spend his fate points to make it happen. The doctor steps in with a solution, revealing a nearby abandoned mine-ruined cave where they can stay. The cave offers shelter from weather and even has old miners' tools left behind. Yoshio is astonished by this discovery, amazed the doctor knew about such a spot nearby, and grateful the villagers now have a safe place to rest. Russ, thrilled, asks the doctor to guide them there, and they set off. The cave is just 5 minutes from their campsite, close enough to return later for their wood. The horse-drawn wagon starts moving toward the new location. The wagon travels along tight roads beside a cliff until it arrives at a tunnel sealed with boards and 2 doors. The doctor explains that the bigger door was for moving goods, while the smaller one leads into the tunnels. Long ago, people mined there, But after finding richer ore nearby, they turn the old site into a living and storage space. The doctor and Russ push open the large doors, and the villagers guide the wagon into the cave. Inside, the doctor taps a lantern on the wall, making the ore inside glow brightly, soon lighting up all the other lamps in the cave. The light shows a large area with a table, chairs, crates, and circle doors carved into the walls. The villagers are stunned by how big it is, and Yoshio is equally impressed. He sees the place is dusty and worn, but it's a huge improvement over the wagon, which excites Ruse as he explores. The doors open into rooms, and the doctor notes that the miners carved them out for personal spaces. The group is too caught up in their new home to pay much attention to his words. Back in the wagon, Kem gently holds her brother's hand, telling him they've reached a safe new place and wishing for his recovery. Meanwhile, Layla spots a freshwater spring in the cave wall, plus a stone furnace and basic cooking tools, which she's thrilled to find. Layla happily declares they can start housework, delighting her daughter, but first she rolls up her sleeves, determined to clean the place thoroughly. Yoshio expresses deep gratitude to the doctor for bringing them to this safe haven. As time passes, the doctor cares for Gams in one of the rooms while he heals. In the main area, Layla hushes everyone to keep from bothering the resting warrior, urging them to tidy up so well that Gams will be amazed when he wakes. The villagers are busy organizing the cave, moving items around and cleaning the floor. They take useless things outside but keep anything that might be fixed in a corner. Carol cleans the floor in one room and happily looks at the bed, saying that with 4 rooms available, she'll share one with Gams, dreaming of sleeping beside him. Kem overhears this and stares at Carol from the doorway, quietly telling herself that it's clear her big brother would share a room with her instead. Kem thinks Carol is still young and doesn't think much about it, but feels Gams spoils her too much. She believes he should say no to Carol, even if she's a child, if it's something he doesn't want. Meanwhile, Lyle listens to Kem without her knowing and then walks away. Yoshio worries about Kem and Carol's bond, but sees they're getting along as villagers. He thinks that if they can make the cave a decent place to live, there won't be any housing problems for now, so he can finally begin to focus on other things. Yoshio feels good about the idea of truly building a village and lets out a pleased sigh. He gets up from his chair and stretches, noticing it's already noon. His eyes feel tired, and his stomach growls, so he decides to grab some food. As he leaves his room, the door across from him opens too, and he comes face to face with his little sister, Saki. She points out his messy appearance, and Yoshio freezes, saying her name aloud. Saki pushes her hair back while looking at him. Yoshio asks if she's been on a break, but she doesn't answer him at all. Saki then tells Yoshio to step aside so she can go downstairs to eat. He nervously says he's heading to the first floor too. Hearing this, Saki firmly orders him not to use the bathroom there, standing with her hands on her hips and glaring at him. Yoshio turns to her and starts to respond, but suddenly remembers the stalker incident, which fills his mind with shame. He looks down, gives in, and turns away, promising not to use the first floor bathroom. As he keeps going down the stairs, Saki, annoyed, tells him to at least argue back a bit. She calls him weak and asks if he thinks she's dumb. Back in his room, Yoshio reflects that Saki has been much grumpier since the stalker incident. Every time they meet now, the mood gets heady. It wasn't always like this. They used to be so close they'd hang out together. Now everything's changed, and he feels sad, wondering if they'd still be tight siblings without that event. Yoshio wonders what might have been if the incident never happened. A sharp pain hits his scar as he recalls the stalker encounter, but he forces himself to keep going, knowing regret won't fix anything. He decides to check on the villagers and focuses on the cave's common room, where cleaning is almost done. Layla remarks on how the place looks, and Ruse asks where Ken is. His wife says she's with Gams, checking on him. Carol wants to go too, but her dad tells her to give them space for now. Instead, he suggests exploring the rest of the cave with her, and she happily agrees, excited to show Gams around later when he's better. Meanwhile, the doctor writes notes while Gams rests in a bed nearby. Kem comes in and asks to take care of her brother while the doctor rests. He says yes, noting the poison's effects have calmed down, and tells her to call him if anything odd happens. Along with Gams, Kem takes his hand and assures him she's there. Yoshio sees that Gams' health is improving steadily. Stable thought it was okay to step away from him for a moment, but then his eyes caught a pop-up window that said, "Dream coming out of the warrior," sparking his curiosity about what it could mean. Eagerly he clicked it, and to his surprise, the screen transformed entirely. As the new image became clear, he found himself looking at an unfamiliar place where a younger Gams stepped through some doors. A clerk handed Gams a purse filled with his reward for defeating monsters, praising him for finishing his first mission. Yojo then understood he was seeing Gam's dream unfold, and Gams expressed his thanks to the clerk. Gams turned down an offer from other adventurers to go for drinks, explaining that his little sister was waiting for him at home. Yoshio figured he was talking about Kem, reflecting that Gams had a simpler, more innocent time in his past. When the warrior got home and walked inside, he saw his father at a table, drinking heavily with empty bottles scattered around. Frustrated, Gams pointed out that his father was drunk again, which made the man angrily hurl a bottle toward him and shout about his disrespectful tone. Gams, standing firm, didn't back down. The warrior tossed a purse onto the table as payment for his father looking after Ken while he was away working. The man peeked inside the purse, already thinking about buying more liquor, but when Gams asked where his sister was, his father went quiet. Going down a staircase, Gams was devastated to find his sister in nothing but tattered rags, lying on a filthy cloth on the floor, nearly starved. He scooped her up, urging her to hold on, asking how long she'd gone without food, while a stunned Yoshio remarked that this was a terrible scene. Furious and trembling, Gams said sorry to her for not leaving that awful place with her earlier. As he stood to leave the house, his father tried to block him, claiming he had only been careless because he was drunk and promising to keep their deal from now on. Unmoved and outraged, Gams ordered him to step aside or face serious consequences, giving him a fierce look that made the man instantly comply. Walking through the snowy night with his sister on his back, the girl asked Gams where they were headed. She wondered aloud where they were going, and Gams answered that it'd be anywhere but back there. Kem worried that their father would be furious if they didn't return soon, but Gams firmly said they'd never see him again, so she didn't need to be afraid. She confessed that their parents likely hated her for being a troublesome child since they always scolded her, but Gams shot back that it was their parents who were wrong. He revealed they even planned to sell Kem as a slave for being bad, something she didn't deserve. They even called her worthless, saying she should at least be useful somehow, and as Yoshio realized the awful conditions they'd endured, Gams stopped walking. He set his sister down, turned to her, and told her not to see those people as her parents anymore, urging her to erase them from her mind. He offered her a life with him from then on as she wanted, and she cheerfully said she'd be happy as long as her big brother was with her. Embracing her, Gams vowed they'd have lots of fun and find happiness together, and she nodded in agreement. The screen returned to normal, and Yoshio realized this explained Kem's strong attachment to her brother, seeing how she came to rely on such a dependable older sibling. As Kem gripped Gams' hand, the warrior woke up and apologized for making her worry. With tears in her eyes, she hugged him, relieved he was okay. The others soon noticed Gams was awake, and Russ praised the doctor, while Layla and Carol rejoiced. Thankful he was back, Yoshio leaned back to relax, observing that all the villagers were thrilled too, as there wasn't anyone quite like Gams out there. Gams is a reliable and likable character, naturally popular due to his good looks and strength, unlike the young man who nervously laughed as he describes him. The young man explains that Gams would always put his life on the line to protect his sister, confident that their connection will never weaken. He keeps laughing uneasily until he realizes tears are streaming down his face, wiping them away while questioning why he hasn't changed despite his deep regret over past events, enough to make him cry. Slumping over his desk, he feels overwhelmed. In frustration, he insists he wants to transform as tears still pour from his eyes. Yashi's father and sister head out early for work, with Saki complimenting the necktie he once gave him. From his bedroom window, Yoshio watches them leave with a heavy heart until a sound from his computer catches his attention. On the screen, he sees Layla cooking in the cave, instructing Carol to set out the dishes as she prepares the meal before Gams and the doctor come back from Patrol 3. Several days have passed since the villagers settled into the cave, now equipped with everything needed for daily life, thanks to everyone pitching in. Their way of living has greatly improved because of this teamwork. As Russ fixes some furniture and Ken constructs a building, Yoshio reflects on how different this secure, well-furnished cave is from the rough, temporary camp they had before, deciding that paying for this miracle was worth it. Checking on the patrol in the forest, Yoshio recognizes that the doctor is the greatest gift from the miracle. Out in a clearing, Gams stands ready with his weapons, facing a fierce boar charging straight at him. He bravely blocks the beast with his crossed blades, holding his stance as it pushes him back. While Gams keeps the boar under control, the doctor pulls out his longbow, takes careful aim at the boar's head, and releases an arrow that strikes true. The arrow lodges itself in the boar's eye, and from the bushes, the physician cautions Gams not to overexert himself while still healing from his injuries. Gams expresses gratitude, calling him Mouse, a traveling doctor summoned by Yoshio through a miracle. Miss excels not only at making medicines and healing, but also at archery, perfectly balancing Gam's close combat abilities. On top of that, the doctor can use plant manipulating magic, which he applied to the wood they needed. Normally, gathering logs would take months, but most finished it in an instant, also guiding them to the cave with almost unbelievable skill. Yoshio sighs, wishing Mouse would stay with the village, though he's currently just a guest, and his background remains a mystery. The conditions for him joining permanently are unclear, leaving Yoshio annoyed, especially since he spent 30,000 yen worth of fate points to bring him here, realizing the gain isn't so simple. Gams and the doctor tie up the boar and haul it back to the cave, where Cam and Carol welcome them in the main chamber. Russ is amazed by the catch they brought, and Carol cheers as her mother announces they'll have meat for dinner. She adds though that they're running low on salt and seasoning, which are vital for cooking and storing meat. Yoshio agrees this is a real problem, pointing out that even with plenty of crops, fish, and game near the cave, they'll need more than just abundance to thrive. The villagers decide they need a steady food supply, so they begin creating a new farm. They soon realize they'll need seeds, salt, and seasonings for their crops. The leader considers whether a peddler's visit to Miracle could bring a vendor to the village. Still, he excitedly shares his bigger plan to summon a golem as a helper, no matter what it takes. A golem is a human-like figure made of rock that can follow basic instructions. This creature never tires and can labor all day long. Even better, the player can direct it with a gaming controller. These strong, rocky beings could solve the village's shortage of workers with their endless energy and power. For Yoshio, the best part is using a controller to guide the golem, letting him take an active role instead of just watching the village. However, summoning the golem costs 700 fate points, which equals 7,000 yen in real money. He already used 300 points to summon Mouse, nearly emptying his reserves for a time. Thankfully, Gams and his daily prophecies have boosted the villager's gratitude toward God, raising his points to 160. He gains 10 points each day from their thankfulness, so he plans to save up for the golem that he avoids spending for almost 2 months. He rubs his head, thinking how long that wait will feel, and admits he can't buy more fate points because his savings are gone. In the past, he was careful with money, preserving his childhood savings and the extra cash his father gave him when cheerful. But he has since spent it all on the village of fate. Looking up, he sees the villagers happily eating dinner together, then sighs, stands, and goes downstairs to brew some coffee. Later, while drinking his coffee, he recalls that Kem and Gams were building something together a few days ago, curious about their project. Kem cheerfully says it's nearly done, asking her brother if it's okay to craft it as they did. In front of them is a rough shrine to the god of fate, its figure carved from a tree trunk. Gams pats Kem's head, assuring her that her heart matters most, confident their deity feels their intent. Miss approaches, wondering if it's an altar and statue for their god, and the priestess agrees, apologizing for its rough look. They built this spot to honor him and leave gifts, and Yoshio is glad for the villagers' devotion. He notices the statue's crude shape makes it unclear if it's male or female. He always thought he was a male god, but now questions the god of fate's true gender. Kem sets 3 fruits on the altar as a gift while the villagers pray. The fruits glow and disappear as they pray, startling Yoshio at first, though he figures vanishing offerings make sense in a world where God exists. He then sees his fate points rise by 1, linking it to the offering. A message appears, explaining that points come from both gratitude and gifts, with pricier items earning more, urging him to support the villagers like a game show host. Taking this in, he wonders if he should ask the villagers to offer unwanted items, though valuable ones would yield more points. He doesn't want to trouble them, so he decides against pushing too hard. Kem's Bible glows with a new prophecy, and Yoshio thanks the villagers for their feelings as they gather to hear it. Miss watches with crossed arms from a wall as the god of fate speaks. The young man tells the villagers they don't need to strain themselves and can give him extra or unneeded goods, which he can turn into miracles. He wonders if he sounded like he was begging, but the villagers sincerely call them humble and kind. Yoshio remarks on their innocence, saying they'd likely fall for schemes or shady religions in modern Japan, and admits they're being fooled by one now. The next day, Roos asks Gams to assist him, and Yoshio watches as they drag a log into the cave, set it on the altar, pray, and make it disappear. Surprised they can offer something so large, he questions if they'll give offerings daily and if praising God brings them joy. Noticing it's already afternoon, he stretches until his mother calls out that a package arrived for him. He senses her annoyance, goes downstairs, takes the delivery, and is shocked to see it's addressed to him from the Village of Fate. Unwilling to believe it's a gift from the game world, he claims aloud it's probably from a contest he won, while privately guessing it's just extra stuff from the game company. like a guide or notes. He sighs, feeling silly for overreacting as his mother opens the box. Yoshio's eyes widen in disbelief when he sees 3 strange fruits from the game inside. His mother can't name them and casually asks if he wants exotic fruit from somewhere. He agrees to try some for dessert, observing that one looks like an apple but smells like citrus. Remembering the villagers love them, he takes a bite, enjoys the amazing taste, and decides the creators must have cleverly sent a rare Japanese fruit from abroad. Happy with the tasty gift, he has no complaints. The next day, he thanks the villagers for their offering, urging them not to overdo it or waste food, and says he'll take non-food items if they're short, encouraging them to prioritize themselves since daily offerings aren't needed. He thinks that once he earns enough points for a golem, he'll surely help them all. Seeing Kem clean the statue, Yoshio is yanked from the game by his mother yelling for him to hurry, and he notes she seems angry. When he gets downstairs, she questions what he'll do with that, and he's stunned to see the log from yesterday, sent by the Village of Fate. Alarmed, he says this prank has gone too far. Hauling the heavy log to the backyard, he recalls his mother telling him to use his ridiculously strong body to move it. Tired, he remembers Ruse and Gan's laboring when he told them to start cutting trees, then tries to dismiss it and calm himself. Unable to take the delivery seriously, he decides to complain to the game company. Checking the stamp for a contact number and finding none, he sees it's from Hokkaido. Even searching the company's address yields nothing, and a satellite map shows only a tiny building. He doubts a small company could make such a great game and wonders if they really created it. Somewhere else, he grumbles about the company's secrecy. Frustrated that he can't travel to Hokkaido to check his suspicions, unsure of what to do with the log he has, the following day, a new package shows up. This time it's a cooler. When he opens it, he sees it's packed with fresh meat, likely from a fierce boar, remembering how Gams and Mos hunted one down the day before and Kem offered him a share at the altar. To his surprise, his mother walks into the kitchen while he's fumbling to explain what's in front of them. She nervously questions if he's been wasting money on something shady, so he quickly nicks up a story about an online project to revive a village. He says his idea got accepted, which is why he's been chatting with villagers who send him local treats as thank yous now and then. His mother buys the story completely, happy to hear it, while Yoshio quietly admits to himself it's sort of true. He passes her the meat, calling it wild boar, and suggests she cook with it as she ponders how to use it. She wonders how to cook it while Yoshio privately frets about whether it's even safe to eat, convincing himself it's not really monster meat. Since then, he's been getting almost daily deliveries from the Village of Fate, stuff like different fruits, monster meats, and even a glowing crystal he activates for light, which he assumes has a bulb inside. He's also received logs occasionally, 3 so far, and wonders if someone might buy them from him. He drags one to the garden, and seeing all these gifts, he starts thinking that building up a village in the game sends valuable stuff to the player as rewards. He guesses the game was created by rich folks and he got picked as a tester by accident. One evening, he's at the table with his parents, eating some of the monster meat he got. His father eats quietly, looking uneasy, while his mother asks if they can get more fruit. She says she feels healthier since eating the village food, and Yoshio promises to ask the villagers for more. She mentions that Saki loved the meat too, and his father chimes in, calling it delicious, praising its natural taste and texture. Yoshio realizes it's been ages since his father spoke so much, figuring he must really like it. Later in the garden, Yoshio tries woodworking with the logs he's gotten, hoping to teach the villagers something, but finds sawing tougher than expected. He wonders if he's messing it up as his father walks over, asking what he's up to. Yoshio explains it'd be a shame to waste the wood and asks to use his father's extra tools. He struggles to keep sawing, the blade jamming, so his father tells him to move and takes over. Yoshio watches, impressed, as his father cuts through the wood easily, pointing out he wasn't using the saw right. Yoshio figures he was avoiding neighbor complaints about the noise and hands the tool back. After that, his father starts giving him tips, and that weekend, they turn the logs into planks to fix the garden fence. Thinking he might teach the villagers to cook meat, he gets his mother to show him some recipes. He learns to cook for himself and starts eating lunch with the villagers daily. One night, he's in the kitchen when Saki gets home from work. Gans enjoys chatting with her and welcoming her home, crediting the Village of Fate for making it possible, though he's unsure if he's aiding the villagers or they're aiding him. His main worry is the village's defenses, so he checks the palisade around the cave entrance. When Kim asks if monsters could leap over it, he reassures her that he and Mouse can handle any that get through, though he admits the real problem is being vastly outnumbered, as they were before, and he accepts this with a grim tone. Yoshio observes that they seem more confident in their defenses now, but the villagers have been acting odd recently. At first glance, their lives appear peaceful and steady, almost free of concerns, yet they seem to be faking calmness while hiding restlessness. Carol notices this too, as their daily talks grow stiff and dull, and they all sigh when glancing at the wooden calendar. As the month nears its end, Yoshio wonders if something big is coming. When all the villagers gather around the table, Carol asks why they look so down, and after nervous looks, Ruth and Isla try to comfort her with a fib. She points out how they stiffen when eyeing the calendar, and her father, realizing they can't keep it secret, pats her head and sits next to her. He recalls how, back in the village, they always warned her to stay inside on the last day of the month. She remembers the village locking down then, with adults acting scared and irritable that day. Russ explains to his daughter that it was all to shield the kids and asks if she remembers the world calendar. She describes how each month, one of 7 gods, earth, moon, nature, water, fire, light, and thunder, rules the world, and Yoshio takes mental note as Carol asks her father why only 7 gods hold power, especially with 12 months. Russ clarifies that these 7 gods once ruled just a week each, naming the weekdays, and are the world's main gods, overseeing lesser ones like the god of fate. Yoshio starts to grasp his role better. He learns the 7-day system fell apart after a huge god battle shifted power, causing wild weather swings as each gained ground, taking a full year to settle. The fighting stopped, leaving the 7 gods to rule both their days and thriving periods. The defeated gods, dubbed evil, were cast deep into the earth, where they still grow stronger today. Once a month, they attempt to resurface, boosting monsters with their power. This last day, called Evil God's Temptation, makes monsters fierce and cruel, and Yoshio sees why the villagers are on edge. Noticing their calendar matches his own world, he calculates 10 days remain until this event. With his current fate points, Yoshio realizes he can't shield the villagers, and as the clock hits 11 o'clock p.m., he spots Ruth alone at the table, a rare sight. Russ's wife asks what's bothering him, noting his recent sleeplessness. Clutching his head, he admits he can't shake the last evil god's temptation, saying they barely escaped unharmed. With another monster attack looming, he fears losing his family this time, trembling as he speaks, leaving Yoshio curious about what happened back then. Carol wakes up in her bed on a bright, calm morning, curious about where her parents are. She walks to the mirror and looks at her face, happy to see she looks cute today too. Going downstairs, she finds her parents in the kitchen and says good morning, and they cheerfully respond while her mom tells her to wash her face. The laughing girl goes outside and cleans her face with well water, enjoying how cold and refreshing it feels. Carol suddenly remembers she didn't bring a towel while she fixes her hair and thinks about what a good girl she is. Kem walks up with a bucket and asks if she just got up. Carol asks her where Big Brother Gams is, and Kem oddly says he's guarding the village gates. Yawning, Carol says she doesn't care if he's not there, irritating the priestess, then runs off and slams her door shut as Kem yells after her. Back at the table, Carol pretends not to hear her mom ask about her talk with Kem. Ignoring Ken's outburst, Carol starts eating her breakfast. After finishing, she heads to the door to leave, and when her mom asks where she's off to, she excitedly says she's going to see Gams, rushing out despite her mom's warning not to. As the lively girl hurries through the village, people say hello and comment on her energy, with one vendor giving her fruit and another asking about her parents. She suddenly stops in front of the huge curtain wall. Carol stares at the village's protective wall, noting how massive it always looks. Then she spots Gams and the other hunters gathering by the city gate, heavily armed and looking tired. She runs to the startled Gams and hugs him. He tells her she can't go outside today, and when she asks why, he says it's a special day, pointing out there are no other kids on the streets except her. Noticing this and seeing the worn-out hunters getting ready, she asks Gams if he and the others made the wall. Gams tells her there was a huge war in the area many years ago, and this place was a key fortress. After the war, refugees moved into the empty stronghold's walls and started thriving, creating the town. Carol, not fully getting it, asks if the walls keep everyone safe from all enemies, but their talk is interrupted by Lila, who arrives out of breath, happily grabbing her escaped daughter and carrying her off. Another hunter asks Gams something. A fellow warrior asks Gams if he knows them, and he says they're his next-door neighbors, who've been very kind to him and his little sister, both wanderers. The soldier remarks that they don't seem scared at all, and Gams says the walls have never been broken since the town began. Layla says sorry for Carol interrupting and promises to discipline her later, but Gams suggests going easy on her. Carol waves at him, saying she'll see him again soon, and Gams waves back until she's gone. Gams lowers his hand and wonders darkly if there will even be a later, noticing the busy village around him. Carol asks her mom if there's something like a festival today while Layla knits. Looking out the window, Layla says it'd be nice if it were a festival, then perks up and suggests they have a feast tomorrow instead. Carol cheers as her parents share a smile, while the unaware Carol keeps playing and the villagers hurry around outside. Looking out the window, Roos tells his wife he's already loaded the wagon with everything they might need, just in case things take a turn for the worse. He hopes it won't come to that, and that all their efforts to ready the town will prove unneeded. Holding his hands tightly, he silently asks for safety, wishing they can make it through the day without harm and greet the morning sun as usual. That night, the warriors fire a barrage of arrows at a wave of monsters nearing the town. The approaching horde of creatures loses many to the arrows, and the town's brave defenders are stunned to see more than 20 monsters charging together. They'd never dealt with such numbers before, and it's clear various kinds have teamed up for this attack. The gate's commander calls for stronger defenses, hoping the enemy will tire itself out against the sturdy doors without breaking through. Beyond the walls, the monsters claw at the iron-strengthened gates and pound on them relentlessly. All of a sudden, one monster drops dead, pierced by a spear from above, where Gams stands ready on the wall. He holds a handful of throwing weapons in one hand and grips another spear in the other. The warriors take after Gams, fiercely committed to keeping the creatures out, no matter what it takes. Then, a huge beast emerges behind the goblins. A green creature leaps into its grasp and gets hurled toward the wall, knocking a man beside Gams off and landing inside the town as the warriors grasp the danger. More monsters are tossed over the walls, getting past the stretched-thin defenders and cutting them down from behind. Gams can't believe how it's come to this as the creatures close in ruthlessly and break through the gates. The villagers scream in terror, running deeper into the town to escape. Inside their house, Russ and his family huddle close, the parents pleading with God to save their daughter Carol at least. Russ yells as something smashes against their boarded door until it caves in, and a blood-soaked Gams steps inside with his sister. Gams' sister Alila checks if the family is okay, and they're relieved to see the warrior. Alila asks if Gams and his sister are fine too, and he assures them the blood on him is from monsters, while his sister Kim's is from people she treated. As Kim patches up Gams' injuries, Roos asks how the battle's going, and Gams begins to say it's not looking good before admitting outright that it's a lost cause. The gates are down, and a flood of monsters is overtaking the town. With most of the fit defenders now dead, Gams left the front line, feeling all hope was gone, wondering if he could at least save his sister and Russ' family. He tells them it's beyond their power now and urges them to run immediately. Looking at his scared family, Russ steps forward and tells Gams they've already packed the wagon with plenty of supplies as a backup plan, pushing them to go. The group heads to the stable while Gams keeps watch for danger. As everyone climbs onto the wagon, Russ lets Gams know they're set to leave, but then he spots two goblins coming their way, having been seen. Gams orders Roos to get on the wagon and charges forward, ready to take out the creatures in one swift move. He swings his long sword down, but the goblin dodges and strikes back. Gams slashes again, landing a fatal blow. With the monster dead, Gams tells Roos to move and jumps onto the wagon as the shopkeeper speeds off past the chaos. Gams informs Roos that the town's gate is blocked, but a collapsed section of the northwestern wall might offer an escape route. Russ nods, then stares ahead in terror as he sees the town engulfed in flames. Monsters attack the helpless villagers, killing them while black dogs eat the bodies. Covering his mouth in shock, Roos hears his neighbor's desperate screams for help as the chaos continues. Beside Russ, Gams kills a goblin riding a boar and points to the wall's breach ahead. The shopkeeper steers the wagon through the gap, escaping into the forbidden forest. The town is lost, and as monsters burn everything, Carol's fairy tale book turns to ashes in her former home. Silent in the speeding wagon, Carol asks her mother if they can ever go back. Layla cautiously tells Carol they might return someday, but new adventures await them elsewhere. Kem cheerfully insists they survive thanks to God's protection, and that the god of fate is leading them. Meanwhile, a delivery man arrives at Yoshio's house with a package from the village of fate, which the young man signs for. Back in the story, Gams trains Ruz in combat, pointing out his weak spear thrust. Gams tells Ruz his attack wouldn't even scratch a monster, and the anxious shopkeeper accepts this, still determined. Yoshio watches as Gams kneels and says Ruz isn't suited for fighting. He suggests Russ support him and Moss from behind instead of joining the front lines. Upset, Roos admits he thought all strength mattered, apologizes to Gams for wasting his time, and feels he overstepped. Later, Yoshio comments that Gams is tough on Russ. At dinner, Russ looks defeated, and Lila asks Gams to gather fruit during his patrol since they're running low. Agreeing, Gams catches Carol's interest as she volunteers to help, explaining she's been stuck inside the cave since arriving. Russ warns her that monsters get aggressive when the evil god's influence nears, making it riskier outside. Carol brushes off the danger, saying she'll be safe with Gams, but Roost objects. She insists she'll pick lots of tasty fruit, prompting Roost to slam the table and shout that it's too dangerous, demanding she listen. The room goes quiet. Lyle looks worried, Cam and Gams lower their eyes, and Moose stays out of it. Tearful, Carol cries as Lila speaks to Russ, who realizes his mistake too late. Carol, sobbing, yells that she hates Ruse and locks herself in her room. Yoshio, having seen it all, notes Ruse is under immense pressure. Russ tries to inspire the villagers with prophecy, but it's not enough to solve their problems. With tributes, Yoshio's fate points rise to 214. He debates using a miracle, like summoning hunters for 3 days, but worries it won't fully strengthen his group despite his efforts. Yoshio imagines the hunters as savages who might hurt the villagers, causing them to lose everything, and he envisions the 3 hunters seizing the cave. He thinks that in a typical game, he'd be worrying about something trivial, but here he sees the perfect solution as summoning a golem. He dreams of using the golem to aid the villagers, handling any surprises that come up. However, he doubts he can gather the 700 points needed in time. Over the next 10 days, he knows getting those points will be tough. He briefly thinks about asking his parents for money, but quickly realizes they'd kick him out if he spent borrowed cash on a game, with no chance to argue. Borrowing from his younger sister seems even less likely. He considers selling gifts from the villagers but pauses, unsure if they're valuable or if he could sell them fast enough to get money. Sighing, Yoshio hits a dead end and slumps at his desk. Then he looks up, struck by an idea, and grabs his laptop to search for part-time jobs. It's an obvious fix for most, but he's never worked before. He once tried interviewing for a job in university, but got too nervous, messed it up, and failed, not just from nerves, but also because he was picky and chased high-paying roles. Back then, he only wanted jobs with good pay and benefits, a lesson he should have learned. Even later, he repeated the mistake, applying to a big company that wanted top graduates and predictably failed. His father stepped in, using contacts to get him referrals, but Yoshio still messed up, embarrassing his dad. Deep down, he naively thought failing an interview might excuse him from working altogether. 10 years later, he decides to try again, even for a part-time gig. He's thought about working before but feels pathetic, too old to be so spoiled, yet scared to try and fail again. His past flops haunt him, and he dreads letting anyone down. Still, he's ready to push past the fear and give it a shot. Browsing job listings, he knows people might laugh if they knew he wanted work just for a game. But he believes if he doesn't act now, he'll stay stuck forever. If he can't help the villagers through work, he's got it all backward. A short-term job ending in a month would be ideal to earn what he needs, though a convenience store gig would take months, far too long. Since he rarely talks to anyone beyond family, dealing with customers feels impossible. Day jobs with physical work are another option, but he doubts he's strong enough. Short-term jobs nearby are scarce, and without a driver's license or motorcycle, his choices shrink further. Doing nothing makes even job hunting hard. On his screen, he watches Russ fail to apologize to his daughter, who turns away in anger. As Yoshio's wife gently suggests he give her some space, seeing how upset he is, Yoshio pulls himself together, gets dressed, and announces he'll assist everyone he can. He hops on his bike and rides off, intending to hunt for job openings in free magazines while pushing himself to keep going. Later, he comes back home, and his mother is shocked he went out but smiles when she spots the job listing magazine he's carrying, greeting him warmly. Back in his room, he keeps looking through job ads until his mother calls out that dinner is ready. When he heads downstairs, he's amazed to find his whole family at the table. Yoshio is stunned to see his sister there, but as she responds, he gladly welcomes her home, surprising her. While they eat, Saki asks her mom if something good happened since the meal is fancier than usual. Cheerfully, she shares that Yoshio wants to find a job, making him choke in shock. His sister comments that he's finally driven, but Yoshio explains it's just a part-time gig to begin with since he needs some money. His father gazes at him and says the reason doesn't matter, only that it's great he's showing some drive. Yoshio is taken aback, having thought his father would push him toward a full-time job. Calling him her big brother, Saki points out he's been different lately, asking if he's got a girlfriend, but his mom laughs it off, saying he doesn't seem that well liked. Despite feeling awkward at her remark, he notices his sister called him big brother. His father wonders if his shift in attitude ties back to the village, sending them goods. Yoshio admits that although he's helped revive the village, it didn't feel right to keep taking without getting back, so he wanted to contribute something. Yuki glances around puzzled, realizing she's the only one clueless, but her mom playfully scolds that it's rude to chat during dinner and promises to fill her in later. Sitting on the porch, Yoshio is joined by his father, who asks if he's landed a job yet. He shares that he's found 3 possibilities and plans to call him tomorrow. His father questions if it's just temporary work, and Yoshio explains there's unavoidable business in the village at month's end, so he's free to start any time until then. His father notes that he's ready to jump in now, unlike before when he'd get mad and delay things. He asks if there are other conditions, and Yoshio admits he doesn't think he can deal with customers, so he's leaning toward physical work since that's what he could find. His father offers to ask a friend for help, and Yoshio is stunned, thankful but nervous about depending on his dad and risking failure again. His father insists he'll always be his dad, no matter his age, and there's no shame in that. He adds that if a kid gets support from their parents, it's fine, and if Yoshio wants to achieve something, he should use whatever resources he has, including family. That's part of being grown up. For some reason, Yoshio pictures Russ in his father, remembering how the shopkeeper often urged his daughter to lean on him. Wondering if his dad is doing the same, he bows and requests help. His father turns to call his friend, leaving Yoshio no escape as he shakes with nerves. A father chats with his buddy and asks if he can wear something comfy for work, and once that's sorted, he tells his son Yoshio to be ready in half an hour. Yoshio shaves his beard and puts on a jersey, feeling scared again about letting his father down. He hits himself for being weak-willed and looks at the screen. In the village, Russ sighs in annoyance and asks his wife if he can assist with anything. She says Carol has already handled everything today and mentions how, since they arrived, Carol has been stepping up to help everyone. She adds that kids grow up so quickly, then notices Russ has left. He's hurried to Carol's side and starts to say sorry, but she apologizes too, explaining that people have told her he values her deeply and only gets upset because he wants to keep her safe. Russ feels awkward as she promises not to ask to go outside anymore, kneeling and touching her cheek while confessing he was wrong. He admits that, fearing the worst, he forgot they chose to live together in this new place, and can't hide away forever. Calling her a wonderful part of the village, Russ tells his daughter he trusts her to do what she wants, making her smile as others watch. Yoshio stands from his chair, holds his face and grins, thanking the villagers for boosting his bravery before saying he'll return and leaving his room. Heading downstairs, the villagers cheer as his father drives him to his new job. Yoshio asks what the work involves, and his father explains it's cleaning duty because the night shift at his friend's supermarket is short-staffed after a part-timer quit. He's excited Yoshio fits in, though Yoshio feels unsure if cleaning will suit him. At a small supermarket, a bearded man greets Yoshio and his father warmly. The man in work overalls calls Yoshio a lifesaver, enthusiastically patting his shoulder and saying he heard Yoshio was a recluse but sees he's strong. Yoshio hopes they'll get along well. With that, Yoshio's father leaves and Yoshio almost reaches out but stops, realizing he's not a child anymore and now has a job. His new boss leads him inside, calming him by saying he just needs to follow instructions. The boss says Yoshio can ask him or the other 2 workers, a man and a woman, for help if he's confused or stuck, then introduces Yoshio to them, warning them not to tease him or mess with him. The 2 make some jokes and welcome him, and Yoshio notices they're much better with people than he is. Knowing he's just a regular beginner, he decides to ditch his useless pride. He plans to accept his inexperience and try his hardest without showing off. Politely, he says hello to his new co-workers, hoping they'll get along. After his first shift, Yoshio's boss drives him home and asks if he can come back tomorrow. He explains the next shift is late too, and he'll pick Yoshio up at 8:00 p.m. His co-workers praise his efforts that day and cheerfully say goodbye before the van leaves. Happy, Yoshio enters his home, sure everyone's asleep by then. Everyone was nice and friendly, so he stayed calm and completed all his tasks, like sucking up dirty, soapy water with a big vacuum that could handle liquid and gravel, plus moving stuff, and cleaning the tools afterward. After finishing his work, Yoshio believes the manager misunderstood and gave him the easiest tasks. Exhausted and grimy from a tough night, he longs for a bath but first goes to the kitchen for a drink. Turning on the lights, he's surprised to find a plate of food prepared for him, along with a note from his mother congratulating him and urging him to eat. Grinning, Yoshio sits down, peels off the plastic wrap, and takes a bite, savoring the delicious oni. Yoshio reflects that food tastes even better after a long day of effort, silently thanking his mother for the meal. As he undresses upstairs, he wonders why he ever feared working, then notices the bathroom is warm with hot water ready. He realizes his mother thoughtfully cleaned and reserved the bath for him. Grateful, he soaks in the tub, and as the clock nears 3:30, he sits at his monitor to check on the villagers, finding most of them asleep. Seeing the village quiet with everyone resting in their rooms, Yoshio says out loud that their hard work every day inspired him to keep going. Watching them toil relentlessly gave him the strength to push through. With that, he heads to bed, wishing them all sweet dreams. The next morning, Yoshio wakes up sore, his backside aching especially, and wonders if he'll manage work that evening. Entering the kitchen, his mother greets him and offers to warm his lunch. Yoshio declines her help, insisting on heating his lunch himself as they sit together. His mother asks about his job, and he tells her everyone was kind and the work was easy. He mentions he has to go in again that night, and she's glad to see him trying so hard. Embarrassed, Yoshio shifts the topic, thanking her for the previous night's meal and her extra effort, prompting her to tease him about how well-behaved he's become. As he thanks her again, she mentions a new package has arrived. A parcel from the village waits for him, and Yoshio carries it upstairs, guessing by its size it's from Carol. Opening it, he confirms it's hers and happily pulls out a dirt ball. Though the villagers think they can only send tribute once daily, they can actually send two. But Carol copies the adults and sends items randomly, limiting them to one tribute. She often gives him odd-shaped or pretty stones. Collected from the riverside, Carol sends small white flowers and shiny Duradango dirt balls too. Lately, she's been copying the God of Fate statue gams carved from wood, crafting her own palm-sized figures from wooden blocks with great care. She sends them regularly, and her skill improves with each one, the details growing finer. Watching her carve with a knife still makes Yoshio nervous as she finishes her latest piece and shows it to a thoughtful mouse. Carol interrupts Masa's quiet moment to present her new statue, and the doctor smiles, recognizing it as the God of Fate. Yoshio carefully places her dirt ball beside her other gifts, treasures to both Carol and him despite seeming worthless to others. Sent from a game world, he wonders if they're handmade by a company worker or by Carol herself, though he knows the latter can't be true. Still, he enjoys imagining they're from her. Yoshio, exhausted yet reflective, lies down to sleep, hoping the muscle pain will fade. He marvels at how Carol's messages, no matter how odd they seem to others, keep coming through. He's grateful his mother finds joy in his work and appreciates earning money by helping people. That night, his boss remarks that Yoshio is adapting well to his new job, advising him to relax since mastering everything in just 2 days is impossible. The boss assures him that the staff are good people, pointing out that while another boy might seem arrogant, he's actually a dedicated worker. Yoshio agrees, recalling his initial misjudgment of the boy's attitude, but recognizing his skill and speed at work. He decides not to judge too quickly. The boss emphasizes that diligence is what counts most, praising Yoshio as an excellent worker, which makes him beam with gratitude. As the manager trades jokes with the staff, Yoshio feels the workplace has a warm vibe. He's confident he can give his all here, especially since it's his first job after returning home. With nearly a week until the evil god's temptation, he resolves to stay motivated for the villagers' sake. Having had little time for the game, he checked the day's conversation log. Reading it, he pictures Kem urging Gams for a break, only for Carol to suggest they nap together, sparking a playful argument as Gams walks off. Next, Roos tells Leela that Mouse has been teaching him about antidote mixtures, though he's unsure of their effectiveness yet. Unable to fight like Gams or the doctor, Russ wonders how else he can contribute, prompting Lila to hug him and call him incredibly dependable. Yoshio admires how the villagers stay hopeful despite the looming threat of the evil god's temptation. But as he reads on, his eyes widen in disbelief. A mysterious voice reports on the villagers, describing them as harmless refugees who pose little threat and promising to keep watching them. The voice suggests they might perish from the evil god's temptation, like the humans and dwarves before them. Though the speaker's name isn't listed among the villagers, they express concern about the village's blessing from the god of fate, noting that acting against them could provoke divine wrath. The voice advises caution, suggesting they let nature's judgment deal with the intruders on their sacred land. Stunned, Yoshio realizes the spy is Mouse, the doctor. The revelation that Mouse is a spy leaves Yoshio reeling. He had trusted Mouse as a reliable doctor, but now understands why the game treats him as a guest rather than an ally. From the conversation, Yoshio learns Mouse belongs to a forest tribe that has been wary of the villagers since their arrival. Yet aware of the village's divine protection from the god of fate, Mouse seems reluctant to act directly against them. Yoshio notes this divine blessing in the game's setting, which adds a layer of complexity to the tribe's vigilance and their hesitation to interfere. Fate has come to see that he can be useful to the villagers and feels good about it. But he knows that if Mouse won't assist in the battle, Gams will be the only one able to take on the monster during the evil god's temptation. He's unsure of his next step, but as it's getting late, he chooses to share a prophecy the following day that suggests he knows Moss's real identity. Right after waking up, he plans to issue a warning to push Moss to rethink his actions and stop him from doing anything odd. The next morning, while the villagers in Moss eat breakfast together, Yoshio delivers his latest divine prophecy. Kem, excited by her glowing Bible, announces they've received the day's message. Yoshio says sorry for cutting into their meal, explaining it's urgent, and urges them to endure the evil god's temptation. He promises to use his special abilities to help a bit and assures them they're safe under his divine care, ending the prophecy with a reminder that anyone threatening them will face his judgment. This warning makes Moss glance around nervously, and though he brushes it off when Kem mentions it, Yoshio sees that Moss is genuinely scared of the god of fate's strength. Gan cheerfully says they might survive this with the god's help, but adds they should still try their best since God hates laziness. His words hit Yoshio hard, and the young man feels he's temporarily kept Moss from meddling, so he shifts his focus to their combat power. Yoshio decides he'll have to rely on the golem, getting excited about teaming up with Gams to fight using a golem he can command. To make that happen, he needs to work another week to earn the 350 fate points he's short of to buy it. That night, he's picked up for work again, and as he climbs into the van, he sees that Yamamoto, another worker, isn't there. The woman explains Yamamoto felt sick and took the day off, while their boss says the three of them will clean a smaller store tonight. Since the store is smaller than usual, they should wrap up early, and the boss calls Yoshio a big help for joining them. Back home sooner than expected, Yoshio finds his parents in the kitchen. His mother complains he didn't let her know he'd be early so they could eat together, but he says the job started in the evening and finishing times depend on how fast the cleaning goes. She sighs again but then happily turns to warm up some food for him, commenting that she's glad he's there. Noticing his mother seems unusually cheerful, Yoshio considers asking his father why, but his shyness stops him from speaking. Wanting to break the quiet and thank his father for the job, he hesitates, and just then his mother says the food's ready. While eating, Yoshio senses his mother wants him to ask what's up, which pressures him. He finally asks, and as she begins to mention something about his father, the flustered man cuts in. His father quickly says her favorite show is about to start, surprising Yoshio. Later in his room, Yoshio feels worn out, thinking his boss relying on him might have made him too eager. Yawning, he figures he'd fall asleep right away if he lay down, but he chooses to check on the villagers first. He sees Carol fast asleep, while Gams and Kem get ready to rest, and Roos and others do the same. Layla appears to be on the verge of a close moment with someone in the kitchen, while Moose lies in bed staring at the ceiling, having decided to stay in the cave. Yoshio ponders what the doctor might be thinking, suspecting he could choose to watch and see if the villagers leave before the evil god's temptation grows stronger. Since the villagers feel safer with Moose nearby, Yoshio figures he can't simply push him out and resolves to keep a close eye on him instead. Although it's still fairly early, Yoshio notices that it's been quite a while since he last felt sleepy during an activity. Planning to rest before he dozes off accidentally, Yoshio spots a button with real kanji on it. He remembers what happened when he pressed the dream bubble over Gams and chooses to hit this real button before sleeping. As he expects, the screen shifts entirely, and he's shocked to see a modern house come into view. Zooming in, he checks out different areas of the house until the room layout starts feeling familiar. All of a sudden, he realizes he's looking at his own home, unable to fully grasp what's happening. Struggling to figure out how to get back to the original game, Yoshio accidentally peeks into the bathroom and sees his sister scrubbing herself with a sponge, wishing her chest would grow a bit more. He thinks she'd kill him if this were real, calming himself with the idea that he must have fallen asleep playing Village of Fate and is dreaming. Next, he spots his parents in the living room and decides it's fine to listen in on their talk since it's just a dream. His father tells his mother to stop bringing something up in front of Yoshio. She insists there's no harm in it, explaining that Yoshio gave her a wedding anniversary gift for the first time in years, and she wants to show it off. Yoshio didn't know it was their anniversary today, thinking it'd be awkward for a kid to witness their parents bond up close. His father says he's glad she liked the gift and apologizes for being distant for the last decade. His mother points out that he hasn't smiled since that day, wondering if he's still troubled about something. Yoshio's face fills with sadness as his father admits it's true, the words piercing him like a sharp pain, even if it's a dream. Looking back, he recalls being much more relaxed before he became a NEET, and though he still speaks as little as he used to, he always gave his all to everything. He even strained a muscle once from overdoing it at a father-son relay. Whenever Yoshio puzzled over something confusing in his schoolwork, his father would step in to help. He'd break it down in a simple way for him, and when Yoshio cried after his mother scolded him, his father would quietly slip him ice cream and stay with him until he felt better. Yoshio wonders why he'd forgotten these precious times, having always seen his father as stern and distant. He didn't want to admit his own role in souring the family, so he twisted his memories to protect himself without realizing it, and those warped thoughts stuck with him even as he remained a NEET. Frustrated and regretful, Yoshio hits his desk, but his mother says he's now got a job and seems happier. His father agrees, relieved, adding that he's always wanted to say sorry to him since that day. Yoshio is stunned, knowing he has plenty to apologize for himself, but not seeing why his father owes him one. His mother figures out he's talking about their old argument, something the man has never let go of. Back then, he yelled at Yoshio, claiming he wasn't trying hard enough, and that anyone serious could land a job. Yoshio was stunned, believing he was putting in real effort. His mother, giggles, pointed out how those words clashed with the laid-back vibe her husband had in his college days, remembering him as a party guy who goofed off so much he barely graduated. Yoshio struggled to picture his rigid father as that carefree student. The man admitted, even if it felt absurd for a dream, that if his younger self existed now, he'd have fared worse than Yoshio. Back then, the job market was lenient, with companies practically pleading for workers. He acknowledged Yoshio was a harder working student than he ever was, genuinely trying to find work, yet he, who had just messed around, ignored his own flaws and lectured Yoshio, despite having no grounds to judge, his voice trembling as he spoke. He confessed he tried to be a good father, living sincerely while carrying a heavier load than he could manage, but to think he'd become respectable and then preach to Yoshio ignoring his own past made him feel like a terrible person. He never studied properly himself and resented his mother's pressure to do so, so he avoided pushing his kids to study. Yet he realized he hadn't changed much from her ways. Yoshio then broke down in tears. Sobbing, Yoshio insisted he was wrong. Despite his past, his father was someone he admired, always seeming dedicated. Trying to keep up with his hard-working father, who gave everything his all, Yoshio felt inspired. His mother took his father's hands, saying he'd been wonderful then and now, urging him to ease the weight on his shoulders. They were good adults with grown kids, but parents were just older people with a bit more experience, not perfect. Wiping his eyes, Yoshio's father admitted he saw adults as upright figures. His wife suggested they view themselves as still growing, just like their son striving to improve. They too needed to keep changing. As his parents held hands gently, Yoshio cried with relief, knowing it was a dream but happy to see his parents' view of adulthood matched his. They seemed honorable yet weighed down by burdens too heavy for them. His heart lighter, Yoshio woke the next morning at his computer, smiling as he realized it was a dream but felt okay about it. Heading downstairs, he sensed he could now talk openly with his parents as always. Opening the door, he greeted his family warmly. Later, Yoshio sprinted down the street, panting. It was November 30, the day of the evil god's temptation, 1:32 a.m., racing to reach his computer, wondering how things had come to this. 2 days earlier, on November 28, Yoshio's eyes were fixed on the monitor, watching villagers go about their routines, determined to observe them closely until work started. Everyone was steadily preparing for the evil god's temptation. Girls gathered food and supplies while gams and roos strengthened the palisade. The villagers had rebuilt the fence to close gaps, making it tougher, and added a simple new platform as a watchtower for a better view inside the walls. Atop the watchtower, Mus crouched, scanning the surroundings vigilantly. Spotting movement, he stood, knocked an arrow, and aimed at a black dog creeping toward Gams and Russ, who were focused on wall repairs. The beast growled, bushes shaking as it prepared to lunge. Sensing danger, the doctor swiftly drew his bow and shot, the arrow striking the dog's throat. Yoshio noted the precision of the act. Watchtower suits him well as he spots what just occurred. Russ gestures to Mus and expresses gratitude for his prompt help, to which Mus responds warmly that the doctor is still residing at the cave for now. However, Yoshio ponders when the doctor might depart, doubting he'd also plan to endure the evil god's temptation alongside them. He figures it's likely the doctor will slip away amid the disorder caused by the monster attacks. The evil god's temptation marks Yoshio's first big raid. This event, though typically a simple starter in most games with easier settings, isn't like that here. Yoshio knows the Village of Fate is far from normal, being a tough gang where mistakes aren't tolerated. Observing their efforts, Yoshio feels glad seeing the villagers actively strengthen their defenses. Should he somehow fail this game, The young man can easily picture himself losing much of his drive and slipping back into his old, isolated ways, something he's determined to prevent. The village's development matters, but Yoshio also doesn't want his personal growth to falter. Currently, he holds 540 fate points, which he can increase by adding his daily earnings from his part-time job. With a bit more, he'll reach 700 points, enough to perform the Golan summoning miracle. If he pulls that off, he'll give the villagers a solid support option after Mas departs. The fact that he can command it himself stands out as the greatest advantage. Not to brag, but Yoshio points out he's played tons of games over the last 10 years, from Tetris to Street Fighter and FPS titles, giving him decent confidence no matter the controls. His work shift ends late tonight, and he needs to carefully prepare for the evil god's temptation tomorrow. As darkness settles over the village, Kem tends to the altar while Gans sharpens his weapons. Carol walks up to the warrior, pulling him on his sleeve, and asks if they'll be okay. With a comforting smile, Gans assures her their strengthened defenses will hold up, even if monsters attack. Taking her chance, Carol smuggles against Gam's arm and playfully asks him to keep her safe, sparking jealousy in Kem behind them. The priestess then reprimands Carol, stressing that Gams is her big brother, not Carol's, waving her arms as Carol calls her stepsister while chatting with Gams. Setting that aside, Kem refocuses them on the main issue, asking if they're ready. Kem wonders if they can withstand the upcoming assault as they are, while Rose recalls their last village's fate, his gaze dropping as a hush fills the cave. Muz cuts through the quiet, noting this place is the Forbidden Forest, a risky area teeming with various monster types. He adds that he avoids it during the evil god's temptation and apologizes for what might occur. Kem responds that his help so far has been more than sufficient. She comments that Mouse has already been a huge asset. Looking down, Yoshio might have seen him as a kind, dependable doctor if he didn't know the truth about him. Gams mentions that even if they wanted to flee, the wagon's wheels are nearly broken, and they lack the know-how to fix them. Walking out of the forest isn't an option either. Mus agrees, saying he and Gams might manage alone, but he wouldn't bet on it with the whole group. When Gams hears this, he stands up proudly, clenching his fist tightly, and announces with determination that they'll find a way to defeat the monster since it's their only shot at survival. He promises to give his all and rally everyone to stay alive together. Everyone except Mus exchanges looks filled with fresh hope, and Yoshio quietly praises Gams for being so dependable. The warrior then faces Mas, bowing deeply to thank him for all his help, saying that while part of him hopes Mas would join the fight, he respects that it's not his choice to make. Mas is stunned by this heartfelt thanks, even more so when the other villagers bow to him too. Yoshio senses that they all knew Mas might leave the village someday. The doctor asks them to lift their heads, confessing he should have spoken up first. He admits he wants to assist them all but explains he has a family and someone special waiting for him, so he'd already decided to leave that night. Mus plans to depart the village that evening, leaving behind some herbs he prepared for them to use however they need. Carol walks up to the doctor, asking if he's really going, and he says sorry while gently patting her hair. She smiles and tells him to visit again to play. Yoshio reflects that he couldn't quite figure out Mouse's true nature, but he believes he's not a bad guy. Mus was observing the villagers on his village's orders, though it didn't mean he was fully committed to that role, even if he can't join their battle. Yoshio hopes Mus harbors no bad feelings toward the villagers as he leans back and stretches. The young man realizes it's nearly time for his job and rushes downstairs, vowing to come back later. Yoshio works hard cleaning the supermarket with his team, pushing a heavy commercial vacuum that grows weightier as it sucks up floor spills. His boss runs a polisher, Misaki scrapes off sticky liquids for Yoshio to vacuum, and Yamamoto mops and waxes the floor. During a break, Yamamoto chats with Yoshio and grabs a milk tea bottle. Feeling shy, Yoshio tries to respond well and nick small talk, though he's embarrassed by how it goes. Yamamoto suggests he speak casually, but when Yoshio points out he's the senior, Yamamoto agrees it's tough to switch suddenly, and says he'll wait for whenever Yoshio feels ready. Then Yamamoto focuses on a mobile game, recalling he has a daily free gacha to claim. Yoshio observes that Yamamoto is a big gamer who owns every console title he can and hits the cyber cafe weekly for competitions. The man asks if Yoshio plays smartphone games, and Yoshio admits he didn't own one as a shut-in, suggesting a PC works better in that setting. Surprisingly, Yamamoto's demeanor stays warm after learning Yoshio was a shut-in, even sharing that he had a shut-in phase too, talking about it casually. This openness makes Yoshio's view of Yamamoto soar. When asked about gaming interests, Yamamoto starts describing a game with amazing graphics he loved, though he can't remember its name. Their boss interrupts, telling them to resume work. Back at his tasks, Yoshio thinks he only has time for Village of Fate anyway. After another night's work, his boss drops him off at home, mentioning he's off the last 2 days of November. Yoshio's boss informs him that he'll need him for another shift during the great cleanup at year's end, and Yoshio expresses gratitude to everyone, waiting as the van departs. Back in his room, he switches on the monitor and sees that Mouse has exited the cave, leaving behind a tidy line of healing mixtures and directions for their use on his bedside table. Grinning, the young man comments that the doctor wasn't such a bad person after all, reflecting quietly and hoping Mouse returns if the villagers overcome the looming evil. On November 29th, during God's temptation, a tired Gam keeps watch atop the tower, while Isla and Rose anxiously handle their tasks, and Kem prays hard at the altar, sensing the heavy mood. Yoshio ponders if he can ease their stress, thinking about crafting a comforting prophecy. Right away, Kem's Bible starts to shine. In the prophecy, the god of fate urges the villagers to trust his safeguarding during this dangerous time, vowing to assist if real threats arise, which Yoshio hopes will calm them. This way, Yoshio believes the villagers won't depend too much on God yet stay upbeat, also readying them for the Golen's help. Relieved, Kem shares with everyone that they're under divine care, lifting the villagers' spirits as hope sparks anew. Pleased, Yoshio relaxes, wanting to try summoning the Golen but unsure of how it works or what's required, so he opts to hold off until a crisis hits, then debates napping or eating. Yoshio heads downstairs to cook some odd meat and enjoys a strange fruit for dessert, savoring the taste and noting his family's better health since eating these guests. Then the phone rings. It's his boss with news of a sudden job. After calming him, the boss explains Yoshio just needs to watch the villagers that day, and when Yoshio asks, he learns the task should wrap up by 9:00 p.m. Yoshio agrees to the job, and his boss calls him a savior, mentioning Yama took an unexpected day off. Yoshio wonders what's up, guessing the young man is relaxing, pondering a fair trade-off. Later, his boss haggles with the store owner they're cleaning, pushing for contract tweaks to extend the work, while Yoshio anxiously checks his watch as it hits 9:15 p.m. Though his boss lets him go, Yoshio insists on staying until the job's done, expecting a quick finish, but by 12:37 a.m., he's caught in traffic. A cop tells his boss to turn around due to a crash tied to the evil god's temptation. Yoshio worries the monsters may have already attacked and wiped out the villagers, so he tells his boss he'll walk home, bidding goodbye with a grin before racing off, cursing his luck as the clock hits 1:23 a.m. Struggling after his first real run in years, Yoshio thinks of the villagers, pushing past the ache to hurry home in time. Breathing hard, he arrives, kicks off his shoes, and bolts upstairs, shouting to check on everyone. Despite his panic, there's no sign of a monster raid. Gam's still on guard, the others safe in bed, so Yoshio sighs in relief, only for his sister to call from the doorway, griping about his noise. Yoshio vows to quiet down, but his sister stares, pointing out his sweat and filthy uniform, telling him to bathe. Avoiding her eyes, he agrees to wash up, though she spots his lie, reminding him she's always seen through him. Glancing at his monitor, Saki remarks he's been getting late, asking if there was an event, saying their mom filled her in, and Yoshio had begged her not to shut off the PC. Saki entered the room, now aware of the situation, and Yoshio pondered his next move, remembering the game's caution. He half-truthfully explained to her that he was a beta tester, unable to reveal game details without risking his job and a fine. Saki muttered about his clever response, mildly irritated, and offered to monitor the game while he showered. Not wanting to argue and waste time, he agreed, quickly filling her in on the upcoming outbreak event and asking her to alert him of any trouble. In the bathroom, Yoshio thought about a quick rinse but worried his sister might catch on, so he washed thoroughly instead. Back in his room, he resumed control of the game as Saki reported no changes, casually mentioning that Gans hadn't moved either. Noticing the stunning graphics, Yoshio worried she might suspect something and called the game cutting edge. Saki pointed out he was avoiding eye contact, suggesting he was concealing something, and defeated, he confessed. Yoshio admitted he was keeping a secret, though not a bad one, but couldn't tell her or their family yet. After a moment, Saki stood, called him Big Brother, and went to bed. Alone, Yoshio wondered when they last talked so much, feeling things might be returning to how they once were. Focusing on the village, he checked for monsters, relieved to find none, though 22 hours remained as the sun rose, leaving him exhausted. Yoshio yawned, noting that despite past all-nighters, this one stung after a tough workday. With no night attack occurring, he considered a nap but feared trouble if he slept. Deciding on a break, he grabbed canned coffee and met his parents in the kitchen. His mother remarked on his early rise, so he said he needed to speak with villagers and prepare. His father praised his hard work as Yoshio returned to his room. Back in his room, Yoshio felt relieved seeing no changes, though he wondered if the game was overdoing the constant vigilance. Checking the villagers, he saw Ro relieved Gams on watch duty as they rotated rest. The girls stayed alert, with Kem praying for strength. Yoshio both hoped for monsters and a peaceful day. Dozing off briefly, he jolted awake in panic, slapped his face, and planned to get more coffee, suddenly feeling a presence. From the woods, Gams scanned the area and leaped from the watchtower. An alarm as a warning sounded. The evil god's temptation event began and Gams grabbed a spear, peering through a wall hole to spot 5 black dogs nearing the village. Yoshio recalled their venomous fangs, doubting they'd breach easily. As they hesitated, he wondered if they'd retreat, but one gained speed and vaulted over the sharp stakes. The leaping monster was swiftly pierced by Gams's spear and crashed dead as Yoshio cheered. The remaining 4 wolves charged together, jumping the fence. Gams skewered the first 2 with spears, while a third slipped through, only to be slashed down by the warrior's sword. The final dog circled Gams, who drew a second blade, charged, slid, and sliced it from beneath, leaving it to roll lifelessly, blood pooling from its wounds. Yoshio is thrilled, marveling at the warrior's incredible strength as Kem and Carol step out of the cave to cheer him on. Gams warns them to keep their distance, worried about another attack, but Rus climbs the watchtower and sees no monsters nearby, thinking they're safe for now. A concerned AA comes out, asking about her husband, leaning over the wall and telling him to be careful. Sighing, Gams gives in and asks Kem and Carol to assist him, and the girls eagerly agree, bickering playfully until the warrior announces he needs help moving the monster bodies over the fence. Their excitement turns to dismay when Rus steps up to handle the messy job with Gams, while AAA asks the girls to help her indoors as the men tidy up the courtyard. Yoshio feels confident that they've stopped the first wave, suggesting they might not even need a golem to succeed. 4 hours into the evil god's temptation. After fending off another wave, Gams rests near the watchtower, and Kem brings in water just as black dogs and ferocious boars launch an attack. The fence Gams had the villagers build earlier proves effective, keeping them safe without trouble. Unlike black dogs, ferocious boars can't leap over the fence, and stakes in the palisade are set at just the right height to stop them by letting them crash into it fatally. Gams handles the dogs calmly as they jump over, dealing with that assault which happens in the late afternoon. Yoshio keeps track of when each wave hits, observing that new enemies show up roughly 30 or 60 minutes after the last ones are defeated, with more appearing at hourly marks in what he figures are scheduled events. So far, Gams has come through with only minor injuries, but Yoshio worries that even a great fighter like him could tire out if the attacks don't stop, so he plans to add more fighters later if they make it through the evil god's temptation. While Rus fixes the wall and Lila gives Carol food to bring to Gams, Yoshio decides to take a break for some food and drink himself. As he grabs snacks and heads back to his room, his mother asks if he'll join them for dinner, but Yoshio says he can't leave his computer right then and will eat upstairs. Even when his mother mentions she's cooking his favorite fried chicken, he keeps going, thinking how it's tastiest fresh and planning to grab some later for his room. As evening arrives, Rus spots trouble from the watchtower and alerts everyone to a new wave of 4 black dogs and 3 ferocious boars, the first mixed attack Yoshio has seen. Gams tells Rus to head into the cave, and Rus urges the warrior not to overdo it. Grabbing a spear, Gams insists he'll only win by giving his all. The boars ram the spiked wall, while 2 of the dogs leap over and get taken out right away. Gams quickly draws his long sword and deals with the 2 remaining dogs, but then a loud crash signals the wall breaking under the boar's attack, leaving the defenses down. Yoshio thinks about calling the golem, but holds off since 5 hours remain in the day. With a grunt, Gams grabs another spear to face the charging boars, then plants it in the ground, using it to spring over the beasts as they rush toward him. A warrior pulls his knife from his belt and skillfully throws it at a boar's skull, then grabs another spear. He steadies himself and lifts the weapon as the final boar rushes toward him, driving the spear into its head. Yoshio cheers for his perfect win, boasting that even men would fall for him after this, not just Carolyn. Kem gazes at the fence and Gams suggests fixing the hole, but Rus steps in quickly, taking on the task himself. He tells Gams to rest, warning that everyone would be doomed if he wore himself out. Layla instructs her daughter to give the warrior a tight hug to hold him back, and the girl happily agrees. Ro asks Kem to fetch string and nails, also calling on his wife for assistance. Yoshio nods approvingly, praising Ro as a dependable and good man. While the night drags on, Gams takes a break, his sister prays, and Rus and his family patch up the fence. Yoshio figures out that the next attack is near, but his eyes widen in fear as he spots something alarming. A big group of over 20 monsters nears the camp, and Gams, sensing the danger, shouts for everyone to retreat to the cave. As they rush to follow his order, a message pops up on Yoshio's screen, announcing this as the last attack, sparking his excitement. The final wave brings not only fierce boars and black dogs, but also ugly humanoid creatures from the game's start. Clicking on them, Yoshio identifies them as green goblins. One of the goblins starts chopping at the stakes meant to block the fierce boars, and Yoshio notes its human-like smarts. Behind the wall, Gams readies himself with 2 spears as the fence trembles and collapses. Monsters flood through the opening, and a fierce boar charges Gams, knocking him back in pain. Watching from the cave's doorway, Kem yells in panic as her brother fights to stand while monsters close in around him. Ken swings the door open and steps out, pleading with her brother to rise, but Russ grabs her and urges her to stay calm, holding her back firmly. Layla explains that rushing out won't change anything, and Carol trembles in terror as events spiral, insisting this isn't the time for Yoshio to just watch. Yoshio triggers the summon golem miracle, and the screen flashes brightly, briefly blinding him. When he looks again, he sees the view has shifted to the golem's eyes, realizing he's now controlling the summoned being. The golem is inside the cave, and he remembers where the exit is. Picking up the game controller as a guide shows the controls. He gets the golem moving, noticing it holds a sword, and heads for the cave entrance. There he sees villagers gathered near the smaller open door, turning in shock and confusion as they sense something coming from behind. They freeze as the golem charges past, and Yoshio vows to save Gams. As he speeds by, Kem stares in amazement and disbelief at the godlike figure. Outside, a battered Gams stands at the cave entrance, gripping his blood-stained blade after killing several monsters. He boldly states he won't let them through, even if it means his death. A green goblin leaps onto him from behind, clawing at his throat, but he stabs his knife into its skull. As another goblin lunges at him from the front, the now weaponless Gams shuts his eyes, bracing for the end. Suddenly, he feels a surge of something rushing toward him. As the warrior opens his eyes, he witnesses the green goblin's arms being sliced off, the creature hurled backward. Surprised, he sees the golem's dark silhouette before him. Yoshio urges him to step back, taking charge of the fight. 2 black dogs lunge together, but the golem cuts them down with one swift slash. Yoshio, thrilled, feels justified in saving his fate points to summon the golem, having studied and memorized the enemy's attack patterns from earlier battles. Yoshio effortlessly carves through the approaching monsters, handling them with ease as he moves forward. Though familiar with the controls, he thinks a third-person view would make controlling the golem simpler, allowing him to see the character. Spotting a perspective change button, he presses it and sees the golem's form clearly for the first time. Unlike the rough, stone-like figure he pictured, the golem appears fully human, dressed in a robe tied at the waist. The golem wears greaves on its arms, its long hair tied in a ponytail, clutching a bloodied sword. Yoshio notices the stark contrast between this form and his earlier imagination, but feels a strange familiarity, as if he's seen it before. He realizes the golem was crafted from the wooden statue Gams and Kem carved for the altar, confirming it as an embodiment of the god of fate. After a while, the golem stands alone by a broken fence, surrounded by the carnage of defeated monsters. Kem helps Gams to his feet as the villagers gaze at their savior with both awe and wariness. Yoshio's screen flashes a notification. The evil god's temptation has ended, and no more monsters will attack that day. He shouts in excitement. Kem, tears in her eyes, admires the golem's gallant appearance, thanking the deity profusely. The other villagers join her, expressing gratitude to the god of fate for their deliverance in their hour of need. Carol eagerly recounts how swiftly the statue moved. Though Yoshio knows this is just the game's design, the villagers lavish praise as their god embarrasses him. He decides he should respond to them, but notices the golem won't move, wondering if it's glitching. A notice appears on his screen explaining the golem's mechanics. It consumes fate points every second and becomes immobile once they're depleted. Shocked by the cost, Yoshio realizes that using the golem burned through thousands of yen in moments. He had hoped to use it regularly for the village's benefit, but now sees it's not so simple. Still, the villager's joy brings a smile to his face. Raising his arms, he declares victory and shouts Bonsai, urging himself to embrace the moment and planning to tell the villagers no more attacks will come that day. The Bible glows, relaying the prophecy to the devout villagers, who rejoice at the news. They work together to carry the statue of the god of fate back to its altar, bowing in prayer. Yoshio commends their efforts, encouraging them to rest peacefully. Zooming out to survey the cave's surroundings, he observes the battle's aftermath. noting that despite being a game, the slain monsters' bodies don't vanish on their own, leaving someone to handle the cleanup. While cleaning up later would be tough, his eyes catch sight of an arrow sticking out of a fierce boar's neck, and he grins, realizing Nas aided the villagers from a distance with his bow. A few days pass, and Yamamoto says sorry to Yoshio for an incident the previous month when he abruptly took a day off, admitting it really helped him out because something unexpected popped up. As they grab drinks from a vending machine, Yoshio comforts him, mentioning he too had things to handle on the last day of the month. It turns out Yoshio couldn't have filled in for Yamamoto anyway, since a sudden task came up just a day earlier. Pleased, Yamamoto offers to buy him a drink, and after thinking it over, Yoshio picks a hot milk tea. While the young man fetches the drinks, Yoshio asks about the sudden issue, and Yamamoto, rubbing his head shyly, asks him to keep it quiet from their boss. Yoshio agrees with a smile, guessing it was a date, but Yamamoto confesses it was a limited-time gaming event, adding that as a fellow gamer, Yoshio would get it. Yoshio chuckles awkwardly at the surprising answer before showing understanding and asking if it was a special event. Relieved Yoshio isn't upset, Yamamoto shares more about the game he's hooked on, saying it had a surprise event at month's end that he'd been gearing up for over several days. Noting how it mirrors his recent village experience, Yoshio wonders if the game involves town building, curious about its style. Yamamoto explains he's not into town building or role-playing games, finding them dull with no thrill, so he sticks to PvP games instead. Yoshio feels relieved, thinking to himself that Yamamoto's game isn't tied to the Village of Fate, and even if he fights to defend it, his foes are just monsters. He admits he tried PvP games, but wasn't good at them, prompting a let-down Yamamoto to say he'd have suggested some if Yoshio liked them. Sipping his hot milk tea, Yamamoto remarks how fun it is to get excited about games like that on a break. Later that night, Yoshio sees they finished clearing monster bodies and are making good progress fixing the fence. He chooses to check the day's chat logs, starting with one between Roos and Gams, where the shopkeeper urges the warrior to rest due to injuries from the evil god's temptation, no matter how much he's healed. Despite Kem's magic helping him recover, Gams insists he's responsible for the tough work and keeps going, ignoring Kem's pleas to take it easy. Carol shoves the priestess aside, eagerly offering Gams a massage, sparking a clash as Kem tells her to stop interfering while she speaks to her brother. When Carol claims Gams would rather talk to her, Kem snaps that it's nonsense, just as Lila steps in to save the warrior at the right moment. Yoshio smiles, asking the two girls to assist Lila, and observes how dedicated the villagers are. Though his fate points hit 0 after using the golem, they climb to almost 100 thanks to the villagers' gratitude toward their god. With plans to send him monster meat from the attack, he expects another fate point boost from their offerings. Happy with the progress, he heads downstairs to enjoy some meat for dinner and clear his mind. In the kitchen, Yoshio prepares the fridge for new groceries while cooking meat in a frying pan, excited for what's ahead. Saki comes home from work after staying late, and the delicious aroma fills the air. He offers to cook some meat for her too, and she happily agrees, thrilled by the scent. Yoshio quickly turns back to the stove, and Sumi gives her a plate of tasty-looking mystery meat. Overjoyed, Saki thanks him and jokingly asks to kiss him as a thank you, which surprises him, making him hold her back while noticing something odd. As they sit at the kitchen table, Yoshio realizes Saki smells like alcohol and understands she's drunk. They say thanks for the food and start eating. While Saki enjoys her meal with delight, Yoshio mentions she was late again and asks if she's okay. She assures him her job is enjoyable and simple, but then she looks down, seeming troubled. Yoshio offers to listen if something's wrong, saying that even though he's not a great older brother, talking might ease her worries. After a moment, Saki confesses she's felt followed lately, like someone's watching her. She explains that while shopping at the convenience store recently, she sensed a man staring at her from an aisle. When she looked, he left the store, and though she first thought it was her imagination, she's sure he was stalking her. This reminds her of a stalker from 10 years ago who attacked Yoshio when he stepped in. Yoshio admits he's been thinking about that past event, especially since Saki's been coming home late. She's surprised he's worried, but he reminds her he's still her older brother, despite his flaws, repeating his current struggles. Saki tells him he doesn't need to say it twice, fidgeting and looking away, then admits she thought he hated her for being so calm. Yoshio calmly replies he assumes she hated him. He admits it's embarrassing to say, but he thought it made sense for her to dislike him. Saki looks up happily, calling him her big brother, saying he's acting more like his old self, a bit more decent and cooler than usual. Yoshio is caught off guard by her words and even more surprised when he sees her look down shy. He takes it as a sign she's pleased with his change and tells her to call him when she's late so he can pick her up. Yoshio pulls out a smartphone their mom gave him and shows it to Saki. They swap numbers and she asks if she can call him for help anytime she's in trouble, which he agrees to, though he can't assist when he's busy cleaning late. She thanks him anyway, asking him not to be reckless like before, and he promises he won't. Though Saki stays composed, Yoshio sees she's truly scared inside and decides to back. Sure he'll succeed this time, Yoshio comes home in the van with his cleaning crew after an early finish. They comment on ending work ahead of schedule, but he's deep in thought, staring out the window. He tells his boss he needs to stop at the convenience store to grab something and will get off there. The boss drops in at the store, and Misaki and Yamamoto say goodbye as the van drives off. As Yoshio drives alone to the bus stop, he spots a businesswoman coming back from her job, and some street kids drinking and smoking near dumpsters. Feeling cautious but resolute, he steps into the convenience store. While grabbing some groceries, he's unsettled by the idea that Saki's stalker could be nearby, knowing how much stress this must cause his sister. Thinking back to when he was stabbed, he remembers being taken to the hospital afterward. Fortunately, his body didn't suffer any lasting damage. He recalls Saki crying endlessly after the attack. The stalker was sent to a reform school because of the assault, and both Yoshio and Saki got several apology letters from him. However, the letters were full of empty, predictable words that didn't mean much. Yoshio never found out what become of the attacker after his release and didn't care to know, yet he wonders why this problem has come up again now. Walking home with his groceries, he notices a woman struggling to grab something off the ground. While leaning on a couch, the woman with an injured left foot is reaching for her house keys. As Yoshio gets closer, he realizes it's Sia and calls out to her, offering to pick up the keys. She thanks him, surprised to see him there. Sia, his childhood friend who lived next door, has known him since they were babies. Their bond lasted through elementary school and university. But after that, she landed her dream job at a company while he turned into a recluse. Even when he shut himself away, she kept emailing him and stopping by his house in the early years. Ashamed of his life back then, he never replied to her efforts. This is their first face-to-face meeting in a decade. After a quiet moment, he rubs his eye and asks about her leg. She cheerfully explains she missed a step on the stairs while distracted, sprained her ankle, and a coworker drove her home. Yoshio warns her to watch out, noting her unexpected clumsiness. He remembers a time from their childhood when Sia tried to climb a tree like he did and hurt herself falling. Embarrassed, she tells him not to bring up such an old story, and they both laugh. Saki then spots his work uniform, and he shares that he's been at a cleaning company for nearly a month, thanks to a referral from his dad. Starting to feel ashamed of his job at this stage in life, he's cut off by Sia, who says that's not an issue at all. She promises to always support him, leaving Yoshio surprised and grateful. He notices her blushing and apologizes for keeping her talking so long, suggesting she head inside. Still, Sia says she's happy they caught up after all this time, thanking him and saying goodbye as she goes into her house. As he walks away, Yoshio feels the conversation went well for their first talk in 10 years, pleased that his lifelong friend is still the same. Cheerfully heading home, Yoshio's mood shifts as self-doubt creeps in, and he wonders if Sia was just being polite to match his level. It's been 10 years since she stepped into the world, facing its ups and downs to grow into a mature woman, while he's only recently started working. She has far more life experience, and he feels the gap between them is too wide to close. Looking down in shame, he hears Sia call out from her house. He quickly turns to answer her. Yoshio's friend turns red as she shares news about a new sweets cafe that started near the station, explaining that since it attracts a younger crowd, she feels uneasy going by herself and wants him to join her once her leg gets better. Surprised, Yoshio says yes, mentioning he enjoys sweets too, and Sia thanks him, promising to email him later. As Yoshio heads home, he wonders if this outing with Sia counts as a date, but he pushes the idea away, telling himself she just needs someone to go with her. Confused about why Sia chose him, Yoshio shakes his head and says there's no point in getting caught up in silly thoughts while Saki's stalker problem remains unsolved. When he steps into the kitchen, his mom greets him, spotting a strange grin on his face. A few days later, on his day off, Yoshio unwinds and gets ready to play his game all day, noting there's been no trace of Saki's stalker since the convenience store event, making him think she might have made it up. Also, next Sunday, Yoshio will go with Sia to the sweet shop as her companion, definitely not a date, and he needs to figure out how to handle the next challenge from the evil god's temptation. The last fight showed the golem's strong power, but its big drawbacks mean he can only use it as a final option. Concerned about depending only on Gams to protect the village, Yoshio thinks about using fate points to add more fighters and ponders his next move. Yoshio wonders which miracle would work best when suddenly Gams looks down, startled, as Moose nears the village and happily greets the doctor. Yoshio thinks it'd be great if Moose joined the villagers but isn't sure. The other villagers rush out of the cave to say hi to their friend, with Carol hugging the doctor tightly. Looking down, Moose says he's happy to see everyone safe and says sorry for running off alone. Wyla interrupts, saying he only stayed with them out of kindness, and though they're grateful, they move on. Rus agrees with his wife, happy they can reunite, and Kin sees it as a sign from the god of fate. Watching this, Yoshio smiles and says the game has many great features, including how every village character is likable. Gams then thanks Mouse for helping them quietly from afar, and Yoshio figures if he noticed Mouse, the warrior probably did too. Still looking down, the doctor keeps his humble tone. Mouse says that was all he could do and says sorry again, dropping to one knee as he admits he has no right to ask for anything but still requests their help. Worried, Kem tells him to lift his head, reminding him how he aided them when Gams was poisoned and even afterward, urging him to ask for whatever he needs. Her brother backs her up, saying good deeds should be returned. Miss apologizes once more before brushing his hair back to show something surprising. Two pointed ears appear as Mus confesses he's not just a doctor who showed up at their camp, but part of a race from the Forbidden Forest, watching them since they arrived. Everyone is stunned by this news, and Yoshio labels Mus an elf, his voice sharp and gaze cold. Cam asks the elf if he already knew about the danger of the evil god's temptation in the forest, which Yoshio finds obvious since her dear older brother went through so much pain from it. During the assault, Gams motions for her to relax while Mus apologizes again, admitting he had a slight suspicion of the threat, but found that attack oddly organized, with the monster's behavior showing strange quirks. Gams agrees, mentioning he sensed the same in the last two attacks, including the one that destroyed their village, because even though monsters usually go wild during the evil god's temptation, they shouldn't have been capable of such planned strikes. Russ chimes in, saying he'd never come across a village attack like that while traveling as a peddler. Moving on, Gams asks Moss what he wants, and lifting his gaze, Moose reveals his village was wiped out by the evil god's temptation, leaving everyone, including Yoshio, stunned. Moose explains that his people have lived in the forest for generations, equipped with the skills and readiness to handle monster raids, yet they were overwhelmed. The doctor shares that a dying villager spoke of an enormous assault, unlike anything he'd ever witnessed. This attack stood out as many different monsters seemed to strike together in unified effort, unlike any before. Gams asks Moss if anyone survived, but Moose says the witness died soon after, and the whole village was lost. Still, he noticed the body count didn't add up, with about 10 children's corpses unaccounted for, sparking hope they might have been taken to a monster nest. Yoshio struggles to imagine how heartbreaking and devastating it must have been for Mouse. Seeing his birthplace ruined and having to count the dead as the only one left must have been agony for Mouse. Ken reaches out to comfort the shaken elf, and Gams insists that if there's any chance the kids are alive, fretting over them is pointless. He urges Moss to guide them there. Kem rushes inside to grab weapons, while Riz, Layla, and Carol gather other supplies for the journey, as Gams comforts the thankful elf. Seeing this, Yoshio can't help but admire his villager's spirit. Everyone's set on going to help, so Yoshio won't object, though he wishes he could contribute too. He can only use a prophecy once daily, so he figures he should save it for a critical moment. He wonders if there's anything else he can do, but activating the golem would drain his fate points before it reached them, and he quickly dismisses the idea of Gams carrying the statue since it'd slow them down. Gams then sets out with Moss. He tells the others to stay in the cave, but Kem insists on joining, arguing she's needed to heal any injured children. Her brother warns it could be risky, but the priestess says she knows that and trusts in the god of fate's protection, adding that bringing the Bible might let him guide them with prophecies. Yoshio leaves it up to Gams, who voices his worry about taking his sister but admits stopping her would be pointless. Even if he tried, she'd come anyway, so Carol steps up to Gams, giving him a token, a small wooden carving of the god of fate, to keep her in mind. As he takes it, Chim says goodbye to the villagers while the search party heads off. Rust and his family promise to look after the cave and have food ready when they return. With everything set, the group ventures into the woods under bright skies. Miss knows where the monster nest is, and it seems close. But Yoshio feels frustrated, stuck watching without being able to act. The group pushes through dense bushes, working together to climb over hurdles, until they reach a clearing by a swift stream. Mist adjusts a break, and as they rest, Kem eagerly sips from her water skin. Yoshio notes it's been over an hour since they left, wondering if the rough path is too hard for Kem. Moose then tells Gams something more about their next move. He's uncertain about how many monsters are still at the enemy base, observing that numerous monster bodies are strewn around, along with those of the villagers. He thinks his comrades, in their last effort, succeeded in pushing back many of them and reducing their numbers. Gams adds that there likely aren't many monsters left unharmed either. The elf explains that among the three main monster types in the forest, ferocious boars and black dogs don't usually take prey back alive, suggesting this might be the work of the Green Goblins rising. He proposes they continue their march, and hearing prey, Yoshio reflects that he's been viewing this as a mission to save hostages, suddenly worrying about the children's safety. He mentions that in this highly realistic game, it wouldn't be surprising to encounter a harsh scene eventually. Eulis raises his hand, signaling the group to halt, putting a finger to his lips for silence. They crouch and move toward a cliff's edge, spotting the monster nest below. The monster nest is made up of several straw huts, and Yoshio counts 9 green goblins at a glance, warning that even with Gams and Mosa's strength, facing so many foes at once would be risky. The elf remarks that if the sky weren't clear, they could have slipped in and approached the enemies unnoticed. Yoshio agrees the bright weather isn't ideal for a stealth attack, wishing he could make it rain. Remembering a feature, he scrolls with his mouse and opens the Miracles tab. In the Miracles tab, he navigates to Weather Control, excitedly noting that rain could hide their footsteps and reduce visibility, letting them strike the monsters in their huts. The God of Fate scans the weather options, figuring out that the fate points spent depend on weather chosen. Rubbing his head, he debates using torrential rain, annoyed he never tested this feature before. As he picks his miracle, Yoshio sees players can set the area for weather changes. He moves a circle on the screen with the mouse to choose the area, adjusting its size with the mouse wheel, assuming a bigger radius costs more fate points. When he clicks, the miracle triggers, and heavy rain pours over the village and nearby land. As predicted, the green goblins hurry into their huts for shelter. Miss comments on the handy timing of the weather shift, but Kem eagerly says the Bible glowed faintly during it, guessing its aid from the God of Fate. With rain falling all around, Gams believes they can now ambush the goblin camp. He gives his extra gear to Kem to travel light, and his sister pleads with him to stay safe. Armed only with his dagger, he sets out with Mas, who does the same. They split up upon entering the camp, moving through puddles. Gams nears a hut, crouches by its entrance, and pauses briefly before steadying himself. He shuts his eyes, braces himself, and slips into the hut with his dagger ready. The monsters inside let out short screams before going quiet for good. Gams steps out, blood-stained, wearing a stern look. Spotting Mus exit another hut, he signals to ask if the children were there, and after Mus shakes his head, they agree to press on. As the slaughter goes on, Yoshio observes they've stayed hidden, with the only task left being to locate and save the children. As the rain eases over the now quiet village, the men confirm their next move. When the group couldn't locate the missing children, they ventured toward an uncharted cave, where Gams took the lead. As he approached the entrance, he suddenly leaped back in surprise and pulled out his sword. Kem asked what was wrong, but Moose warned her to step back as a huge red cyclops emerged from the cave, swinging a giant club. Gams stared in disbelief at the fierce beast in such an unexpected spot. The cyclops quickly swung its club at him, landing a solid hit that knocked him backward as Mus, Kem, and Yoshio watched in alarm. Gams, however, had drawn his sword just in time, and the flat side absorbed most of the blow. After flipping backward, the warrior steadied himself and faced the approaching monster with fierce resolve. Moose shot an arrow directly at the cyclops' eye, but the creature's quick reflexes allowed it to slap the arrow aside with ease. Yoshio was as stunned as the elf by how effortlessly the monster deflected the attack, exclaiming his amazement out loud. He pondered how thick the creature's hide must be as a screen appeared, providing facts about the red cyclops. Though related to augurs, these wild, savage beings despise green goblins and are hostile toward them. With their immense strength, typical hunters stand no chance, and the creatures relish eating human flesh. The monster unleashed a terrifying roar while Gams and Mas braced themselves to confront it, leaving Yoshio stunned by the overwhelming odds they faced. Yoshio questioned whether the two fighters could possibly beat such a beast as the red cyclops advanced on Gams, lifting its club for a crushing blow. Gams nimbly dodged the strike, gripping his long sword tightly with both hands and lunging forward with clenched teeth to slash at the cyclops' head. The blade only scratched the monster's tough skin. Watching the fight, Yoshio realized this red cyclops was the strongest foe he'd ever encountered, far too powerful for even Gams and Mas together. For now, Gams narrowly avoided the monster's attacks, but Yoshio knew a single direct hit would leave him defenseless and doomed. From a distance, a concerned Kem warned Mas that Gams wouldn't survive much longer at this pace, as their usual arrows proved useless against the beast. Since regular arrows couldn't pierce the Cyclops, the elf turned to poison ones, pulling a small vial from his bag. He revealed it held a deadly family secret poison, so potent that no one had ever survived it. Mis saw a slim hope of victory if he could strike the Cyclops with a poisoned arrow, though he doubted his strength could break through its thick hide. With no better ideas, Yoshio clutched his head in frustration, wishing he'd insisted they bring something more effective. He regretted not urging them to carry the wooden statue to the monster's lair, leaving them without the Golem's help. Now Yoshio could either send a prophetic warning or use a miracle with the tools they had. Mas's poison, the Bible, and a pouch Gans had given Kem. He thought about advising the group to run via prophecy, but couldn't see them escaping the Red Cyclops unscathed. With that option gone, the surest plan seemed to be abandoning Gams while Kem and Mas fled. Yoshio and Gams tried to escape by themselves, hoping to distract the enemy with flashy moves and act as bait, while Yoshio, sweating anxiously, mutters that they're just NPCs in a game, and dying wouldn't matter much since it's all part of the game's rules. If only he could truly believe that, he wouldn't feel so nervous. But then he scraps the idea, insisting everyone must survive, desperately looking for a solution and saying a game you can't win isn't worth playing. He digs through the Miracles tab, hunting for anything useful, piecing together ideas in his mind to flip their dire situation. Suddenly, his eyes light up with a realization, wondering if his new plan might work, and he quickly types on his keyboard as time slips away. A Bible glows brightly in Kem's bag. The priestess pulls it out, explains the crisis to the group, and declares they've been gifted wisdom from the god of fate. Yoshio taps into this guidance and triggers a thunderstorm, tightening its range as much as he can, while Gams, dodging another attack, slumps against his sword, worn out beyond measure. The Cyclops looms closer, set to crush the tired warrior with its club raised high, but Yoshio unleashes the storm, and a lightning bolt fries the beast, leaving the Red Cyclops scorched and dazed. Gams and Yoshio stare in shock, realizing the monster still stands despite the direct hit. Now it's up to Mus, who prepares a poisoned arrow and takes aim at the stunned Cyclops' open mouth. The elf fires a flawless shot as Yoshio yells wildly just before it lands, but the quick Cyclops blocks it with its club, prompting Yoshio to curse sarcastically before revealing his backup plan. He triggers Summon Golem, using a small wooden figure of the god of fate. This figure, a gift from Carol to Gams, is attached to the arrow alongside the poison vial, and when Yoshio activates the miracle, the carving springs to life, breaking free and clutching the poison in its tiny arm. The golem leaps onto the Cyclops' club, then dives straight into its mouth, swallowed whole by the beast, which soon clutches its throat as if choking while Mus and Gams watch with tired faces. This was Yoshio's clever tactic. He told the villagers he'd call a thunderstorm to hit the Red Cyclops, then have them shoot an arrow into its mouth once it was stunned. He warned that the arrow alone wouldn't do it, so he had Mus tie the statue and poison vial to it. The Cyclops keeps clawing at its neck as the golem and vial stick inside, and Yoshio, furious, shouts that the game's done for the monster, using his controller to order the golem to break the vial, poisoning the Cyclops until its eye goes blank. It spits blood and crashes down. Yoshio cheers wildly in his room, thrilled his plan worked, saying he'd love to thank Gams, Mus, and the priestess and party with them, but his role as prophet is done for now. The group heads to the cave to save the kids, with Gams stepping up to lead again, volunteering to check the cave first since more foes might lurk within. Mus nods in agreement, and Gams slips into the cave solo as the others watch expectantly. After a while he steps out from the shadows, and though Kem first greets him with warmth, the moment hangs unfinished. As she stops speaking, she spots her brother's serious expression near a grave, and both she and Mas grow quiet and somber while looking down. Gams instructs Mas to enter the cave to check, while telling his sister Kem to wait outside. Kem objects, insisting she's prepared for this and that some might still be alive, but Gams firmly states it's his call as her older brother, and he doesn't want her to witness what's in the cave. The priestess stays back, and after a while, Gams and Mus come out from the cave. Their heads are lowered, and their faces show deep sadness as they step outside. Mus drops to his knees, overwhelmed by grief and holding back pain, thanking Kem and Gams for their support. The warrior tells him to lift his head, expressing regret for not being able to save anyone. Meanwhile, Yoshio wipes tears from his face, finding it painful to watch the villager's sorrow, his own tears falling freely. Ken walks over to Mus and requests permission to offer a prayer for the departed. Kem wants the dead to find peace, and the devastated elf agrees to the prayer. Yoshio silently observes the scene as darkness settles in. After the prayer, he sees the three of them bury the children in a simple way, unlike typical games where such moments would be skipped, jumping instead to their return to the village. The Village of Fate isn't an ordinary game. Here, life and death are real. Mus, Kem, and Gams linger over the new graves briefly, and then the priestess speaks to the elf. She asks Moss to come back with them to their village for now, and Gams adds that the people there are concerned about him too. Mus, standing slowly, agrees kindly, relieving the siblings. Later that night, Roos and his family notice the group's grim faces as they return. Carol rushes to greet them, and Moose embraces her tightly. Gans shakes his head, signaling to Russ that they couldn't save the children, while Lila tries to soothe the tearful Kem, hoping to lift everyone's spirits. Roos commends their efforts and notes they must be hungry, heading off to cook food for them. Yoshio, still crying, says they all did everything they could. Layla warmly tells Mus he can stay with them as long as he needs, and he accepts with gratitude. Seeing this, Yoshio wonders what Mouse will choose next. He hopes the elf might join them as a friend, but only Moose knows his true thoughts. Noticing him staring blankly at the floor, Yoshio says if Mus chose to leave and live alone, he wouldn't force him to stay. Yoshio hopes Mus's pain heals soon, no matter what path he takes. Mus stands on a cliff, gazing at the forest below with tears in his eyes and a blank face, feeling no purpose left. The elf steps off the edge and plunges downward to his death. Yoshio wakes in a panic, realizing it was just a dream as the sun rises. He hurries to his computer to check on Mus, and feels relieved to see him sitting alone in his room, safe but troubled. Mus's face shows clear distress, as if he'd been struggling with dark thoughts all night, which had made Yoshio fear the worst. Thankfully, it was only his own anxiety. At breakfast in the main cave, the group eats together, but Kem points out Mouse hasn't come out of his room at all. She wonders if he might be hungry, while Gams and Kem stay quiet and serious. After a brief look at his wife, Roos tells their daughter about Mouse's absence. The group decides to pause their conversation and continue eating. Noticing this, Yoshio understands that Mouse will require some time to recover. He ponders if there's a special trick he could perform to lift the spirits of the villagers. While thinking, he spots a feature called Egg Gacha that he hasn't encountered before and selects it to learn more. This option, available once a month, lets him play a free gacha game with a chance to win an avian egg, a reptilian egg, a monster egg, or even a rare monster egg. After the egg hatches, the creature inside will become a loyal companion to the first person it sees. This creature could either be kept as a pet or grown for food, and Yoshio weighs his options carefully. If it's a bird, it might provide a steady source of poultry. If it's a reptile or amphibian, they could eat it or keep it as a companion. And if it's a monster, they could train it for battle, especially if it's a rare one. He finds this opportunity exciting, and since it costs nothing, the young man chooses to give it a try without overthinking it. As soon as he activates it, the gacha begins to spin, and though he can't pause it exactly where he wants, he realizes he couldn't tell what's inside the eggs by their appearance anyway, so he doesn't worry about it. When he hits the stop button, the gacha slows down and reveals a plain white egg, too elongated to come from a chicken. The game notifies him that he's won the egg, and it will appear near the village. Sure enough, the egg shows up at the base of a tree just outside the palisade. Wanting to protect the camp and not leave the egg unattended, Yoshio decides to share the news with the villagers through a prophecy. Soon after, Kem opens her Bible and reads aloud the unclear prophecy he crafted, telling them about the egg and leaving it up to them to decide its fate. A short while later, Carol comes back to the cave, proudly carrying the egg in her hands to show her parents. Though she proposes cooking it into a dish, her mother disagrees, explaining that even though the prophecy gives them a choice, the egg is special. She believes it's a divine gift that deserves respect, and gazing at the egg with awe, Carol seems to grasp this idea. She hurries to the altar of the god of fate, thanking him and setting the egg there while asking him to look after it. As the egg starts to disappear, Yoshio recognizes this as the same event that occurs when someone makes an offering, realizing with shock that the girl has sent the egg to him. Alarmed, Lila dashes to the altar, kneels before the statue, and apologizes for Carol's actions, insisting she meant no harm. Yoshio finds this response unexpected and learns the egg will arrive at his place the following day. He thinks it might be risky to eat it if it's not from a chicken, so he considers hatching it instead, curious about what type of egg it could be. He searches online for various eggs and determines it most closely resembles a reptilian one. Though he's not skilled with reptiles, he starts to wonder if it might actually be a genuine monster egg, since it originated from the village of fate rather than a typical source. Instead of worrying, he dismisses the idea as ridiculous, convincing himself it's likely just a harmless lizard or snake he can raise as a pet, with the only concern being his family's reaction. The next day, his mother tells him the package has arrived, and when he checks, he notices it's labeled as containing an animal, not raw food like usual. He opens it and informs his mother it's an egg, mentioning it could be a reptile. She instantly questions if he's planning to raise a reptile to impress Saki, adding that the girl Adora might have something to say about it. Yoshio and his father both enjoyed reptiles, a passion that seemed to be a family trait. He discovered that his father used to keep lizards when he was single, but after marrying, he passed the responsibility to his family. Saki, Yoshio's sister, also loved reptiles and cared for them in her room. Yoshio was stunned to learn this, as he hadn't known about her interest, having avoided her room for nearly 10 years. While his mother kept chatting, he silently marveled at how he'd never picked up on this surprising detail about his sister. Curious about reptiles and eager to bond with Saki, Yoshio decided to ask her for tips on raising them when she got home that evening. At dinner, he raised the topic with her and his father, seeking their guidance. He explained that the village had sent him reptile eggs as part of a plan to boost the area, offering him one to raise too. When he mentioned that Saki and his father were fond of reptiles, they eagerly agreed to share advice and extra supplies with him. After the meal, Saki and her father inspected the egg in Yoshio's room, observing its reptilian look and sturdy shell, speculating about its species. They fired off technical questions Yoshio couldn't answer, then gathered tools to build a reptile tank. Before long, they completed the setup, placed the egg inside, snapped photos, and told Yoshio to update them when it hatched, encouraging him to document everything. As they left, Yoshio reflected on how fortunate he was to have two reptile enthusiasts in his family. He thought it might be chance, but the village of fate affair had strengthened his family ties day by day. He even wondered if a god of fate, beyond himself, could exist. Days later, he adjusted his jacket nervously in the mirror before heading out. His mother teased him about going on a date, shocked when she realized it was true. Yoshio rushed off without saying who the girl was, promising to return later. He went to C's house, her leg now healed, and they visited the sweets cafe they discussed. Noticing it was a couple's cafe, he was pleased to see his friend happy. After some back and forth, C admitted she'd often spoken with his mother, checking on him, and learned he'd regained his old cheerful spirit since aiding the village's revival, sparking her curiosity. Wanting to understand his experience, C asked about it, stirring Yoshio's doubts. He worried that if he admitted it was all in a game, tied to microtransactions he worked to afford, she'd lose interest. Game rules forbade him from sharing details anyway, risking his Doctor Who. The Doctor, a Time Lord from Gallifrey, who travels through time and space in the TFDIS. He couldn't lie to C though, so he chose to share his real emotions instead. Keeping the game a secret, he described it as a small village with few residents and scarce local goods, where wild animals roamed. He said it'd take time for the village to grow, but the people were incredibly kind, forming a tight community with unique roles, all working hard. He confessed that thinking of their struggles inspired him to make a difference and give back to them somehow. C saw how much he cared for the villagers, and feeling uplifted, he shared more about them as they walked home. She thanked him for joining her and talking, while he thanked her for paying, despite their playful squabble at the counter. Laughing about it, Yoshio offered to cover the next outing, and they agreed to hang out again soon. Back home, Yoshio went to his room and suddenly sensed something there, wondering if it might be a presence. Bug rolls up a manga and frantically scans the room, finding nothing just as he starts to think he imagined it all. He notices the cracking noises coming from the reptilian egg and turns around right as it begins to hatch. He ponders what might occur as the creature starts to break out of its shell. Yoshio freaks out when he sees the egg splitting open and hurriedly looks for his sister's notes in panic. But he can't locate them before the shell breaks apart and a golden lizard crawls out. As the creature gazes at him, the young man freezes. Relieved that it isn't some bizarre monster, he watches it playfully move around in its tank and finds it unexpectedly cute. Thinking he could nurture it with care, he then recalls to snap a picture of the lizard and send it to his sister and father. He attempts to identify the lizard's species online, and although he spots some that look alike, none have the same shiny gold color as this one. He tells the lizard to stay calmly in the tank, finding it charming, and later that evening, Yoshio's mother calls him downstairs for dinner. He walks downstairs with the lizard watching him closely, and when the young man steps into the kitchen, he senses the heady mood. He's caught off guard when his sister scolds him for ignoring his phone since she had texted him back. He wonders why she seems so upset, recalling that he sent them a photo of the lizard to ask about its species. After he says sorry, she points out that she wanted him to show her the lizard as soon as she arrived home. Apologizing with a bow, Yoshio promises to bring it to her. Yoshio heads to fetch the lizard and goes back to his room, but when he opens the door to the main hall, he's shocked to see the lizard right there, unsure how it got out of its cage. Scooping it up in his hands, he carries it to his sister, and before she can take it, their mother instructs them to sit back at the table and eat since they're holding up their father. Settling down, she tells them to enjoy the lizard after the meal, but to focus on dinner first. Once they finish eating, the siblings and their father go to Yoshio's room. They look closely at the lizard, and Saki is astonished by its golden hue, mentioning that no golden lizard species exist in Japan. Her father adds that, despite its unique color, its sharp scales resemble those of an armadillo lizard. Saki asks her brother if he knows what the lizard eats, and he says it ate some fruit the village sent him earlier. His father then asks if he checked with the villagers about the lizard species, but Yoshio dodges the question, repeating what he said about the village revitalization. He explains that the initiative bred a new species through careful selection to create village specialty, like the lizard and some odd fruit. He asks them to keep the lizard a secret and not share the photos with anyone. On the food topic, he shares that the villagers want him to figure out what else it eats besides fruit, and if it can thrive in a normal home. After a while, Yoshio's family members finally head back to their rooms, leaving him by himself until then. His family usually never came into his room, even if he left the door open, but given the situation, he's certain they'll stop by often now to see the lizard, so he figures it's wise to shut off his monitor when he's not there. Back at the Village of Fate, he notices Carol sleeping peacefully while Russ comments on Mu's ongoing loneliness, saying they've only been content after their village is ruined because their family wasn't lost. Lila agrees, adding that they can only offer small comforts. Kem offers words of comfort to her brother, saying that time will ease his pain and expressing hope that he'll recover soon. Meanwhile, she mentions to Gam her wish to visit the graves of the children from Ulsa's village and pray for them again. Gan suggests they go together once Minos is feeling better. Minos, an elf overwhelmed with grief, takes a book from his satchel and questions the deity it represents, asking why it abandoned them despite the god of fate aiding him. Yoshio figures out that this must be a sacred text with divine writings. Yoshio explains that the book contains the beliefs of the gods Mus and his people follow. He notes that Kem's unique tone lets him write in it, but the other likely can't, suggesting that divine blessings are uncommon in this world and seen as miracles. For Mouse to have seen a miracle himself, it's not surprising he'd feel let down by his gods. Yoshio then understands that if the villagers faced an attack while he was away, there'd be no way for him to assist them. Yoshio realizes that, like the gods the elves revered, he couldn't save the village from destruction if it happened while he was at his part-time job, which he works 3 to 4 days a week. If danger struck on those days, he'd be helpless. He considers quitting his job to go back to being a recluse, but decides against it, feeling it'd be foolish to give up now that he has a fresh start. He wishes Yoshio could keep an eye on the village even while he's working. However, Yoshio thinks there's no easy way to manage that. Then he spots a connection system window offering an app download, letting him play the game anytime, anywhere with a smartphone. Never owning a smartphone before, he hadn't imagined such a handy option existed. He quickly installs the app, and once it starts, he sees he can manage miracles and prophecies effortlessly on his phone, though he can't use it during work hours. Still, he can check it during breaks or while riding in someone's car, which eases some of his concerns. That night, Yoshio comes home worn out from his cleaning job and is startled to see the lizard eating, guessing his mother must have fed it. Though hungry himself, he decides to check on the village first. The villagers are all in the common room when Nas finally comes out, apologizing for worrying them and saying he's thought long and hard about asking to stay with them. Mas shares that he thought about leaving the forest but feels there might still be some of his comrades alive out there. Since he's unfamiliar with the world beyond the forest, this village is the only place he can call home. He bows and pleads to be allowed to stay, and after a short silence, the villagers warmly accept him, happy to have him join. Seeing most tremble with emotion at their kindness, Yoshio can't help but think they're truly wonderful people. A pop-up window tells him Mouse has settled into the village. The window also displays Mouse's stats, and Yoshio is stunned to see Mouse is 151 years old, and even more shocked to learn Mouse is female. She has a striking androgynous beauty, with a face that could belong to either gender, but he'd assumed she was male based on her actions. Reflecting on it, Yoshio realizes she never suggested she was male, and he notices Kem hasn't picked up on it either. He wonders what Kem would think of a girl who hunts alongside her older brother with such skill. Putting that aside, Yoshio feels having an extra villager is a genuinely nice addition, and he hopes they'll all get along with Mouse moving forward. His phone rings, pulling him from the game, and he's surprised to see it's his sister calling. She sounds terrified, asking him to come to her location. She explains that after getting off the bus on her way home, she felt someone watching her, so she darted into a nearby convenience store, worried it might be the man who once stabbed Yoshio. Many years ago, Yoshio hurriedly jumps into action and urges Saki to stay calm, quickly heading out while instructing her not to leave the store. As the lizard watches him leave, Yoshio speeds off on his bike, clenching his jaw tightly as he races to help his sister. Breathing heavily, he zooms through the streets toward the convenience store where his sister has sought safety. Stopping suddenly in front of the store, he scans the area in a panic, looking for the stalker but focusing first on finding his sister and comforting her. Rushing inside, he spots her in an aisle, clearly frightened. Seeing her so distressed and shaky when he grabs her arm, Yoshio recalls the stalker and angrily decides to confront the man outside, telling her to stay put despite her pleas for him to wait. After 10 minutes he comes back, having searched the area but unable to find anyone matching Saki's description. She's upset and says sorry for dragging him there, questioning if she overreacted and what's wrong with her. Nearly breaking down, Saki is steadied by her brother, who holds her shoulders and consoles her, silently vowing that the stalker won't escape justice. Later, as Yoshio goes to work, Saki messages him that their dad will pick her up. Since the incident, either he or Yoshio has been fetching her from the bus stop whenever possible, though this doesn't fix the root issue. Checking his phone, he looks at Village of Fate and sees Mas suggesting the group visit her village tomorrow. Yosa, like the villagers, is confused by this idea, but the elf clarifies that even after the destruction, some useful items, food, and supplies remain in the elven village. Gams is unsure, but Moose insists they need these things, and that the villagers would be happy if their avengers used them. Carol eagerly declares she wants to join, surprising her parents, who worry about her safety. She argues she's tired of always staying behind to watch the house. While Kem gets to go despite being no help, Carol says it'd be fine for her to tag along too. Gans agrees she could come, pointing out she's still young and naturally fed up with being cooped up behind a fence or in a cave. Carol is thrilled, but Kem protests that it's too risky. Gans reassures them it's safer now since they defeated the enemies who attacked Mew's village, adding he'd be more concerned if Carol stayed behind alone. Kem still isn't convinced, but her brother quietly tells her that Russ and his wife will join if Carol goes, and a break would lift everyone's spirits. Yoshio observes that Gams has taken on a bigger role as the villagers' protector than he has, always weighing their needs in his choices. Since the bodies in Mew's village are buried, there won't be anything upsetting to see. Moose proposes traveling by horse, using the village's intact wagon to haul back supplies, making the trip more practical. Noticing him on his phone, Yamamoto asks Yoshio if he's playing a new game, startling him into shutting it off quickly. The young man then sees his coworker looking unusually down today and asks what's bothering him. Yamamoto opens up, bringing up the game again, explaining it's like a strategy simulator where you capture enemy land. He prepared during a day off and tackled an event, taking out a big base, but then one of his own bases was hit. Yamamoto shares that he spent a huge amount of cash to boost his strength, but it all vanished when he lost, leaving him with some bases still standing, though he sank half of his previous month's earnings into the one that got wrecked, and instead of just feeling sorry for him, Yoshio connects with his frustration, having also poured funds into the Village of Fate, revealing his own hefty spending on microtransactions, which helps them form a bond over their common plight. And the following day, Yoshio looks over the village as they gear up to travel to Mew's. The journey takes them toward Mew's village, which sits across a river past a forest near a cave, but with the wooden bridge gone, they must take a longer route along the river downstream to a shallow crossing point, then climb the far bank, and as they trek on, Yoshio studies the map from a high vantage, keeping an eye out for any dangers around them, glad that having Mouse as a villager lets him see every location she knows. Thanks to the elf's travels, Yoshio can now peek across vast stretches of the forbidden forest on the map, checking out spots Gams and the crew haven't reached yet, making it a regular habit, though he still doesn't fully grasp the forest's full size or layout, while Carol enjoys the adventure, pretending to be a princess guarded by her gallant knight Gams, who humors her, as Kim fumes quietly in the background, jealous over her brother as they near their goal. When they get close, Yoshio takes a hard look at the ruined village for any hidden risks, noting it's mostly charred but might still have some spare food stashed away, only to spot a group of people in the wreckage, initially thinking they could be survivors, but a closer look shows they're not, with a middle-aged man leading what seem like classic fantasy adventurers, though he can't catch their words from afar. Without the Bible near enough, Yoshio can't hear them, having learned before that miracles and prophecies only work when it's close, and though he thinks about alerting Gams and the others with a prophecy, he hesitates to use his one daily chance unless it's urgent, especially since the strangers don't look hostile, while Mouse, arriving first, senses something off and tells Russ and his family to hang back. The man insists on joining the group anyway, though it's clear in this world Carol will face risks someday, and then Gans picks up on something too, urging Kem to duck behind a house as Mus confirms they got company. Weapons drawn, they charge the potential threat, with the elf aiming his bow at the strangers, asking sharply what they're doing in her village, as the adventurers shield the middle-aged man until Mouse identifies him as Dold, and he knows her too. Recognizing the elf, the man orders everyone to lower their weapons, calming things down, then explains to Mouse he'd been concerned after hearing about the village's fate, and is relieved she's safe, convincing Yoshio they're decent folks, while Moose assures the villagers this peddler doll was a regular visitor, and the teary merchant, seeing their struggles, offers to trade for anything they've got and head back to their cave once they're done at the ruins. In the village, Ruse happily agrees to an offer, while Yoshio assesses the scene, observing the villagers as they rummage through the ruins for essentials and items to trade. Initially nervous, he's pleased to see everything working out well, likening it to an unexpected bonus. When he checks the miracle tab, he discovers it's a miracle he triggered 3 days ago, amazed that it took effect now in such a situation. He realizes that some miracles don't happen right away but kick in when the time is right. As they pack the goods onto the wagon, Kem requests a prayer for the people of Muse Village before leaving, and everyone joins hands to pray before the graves, wishing them eternal peace. After this touching moment, the villagers in the group head back to the cave, feeling secure with their numbers. Yoshio steps out to grab some meat and fruit, but when he returns, he's shocked to find the lizard has slipped out of its tank again and climbed onto the desk. The creature tilts its head toward the meat platter, clearly wanting a share. Yoshio and the lizard start eating together as he shifts focus back to the game. Inside the cave, Dold commends the village's location and the villagers' diverse talents, calling them perfect residents. Russ is stunned by the generous amount the merchant pays for their goods, but the merchant explains he included a bonus, seeing potential for growth since they're favored by the god of fate. He hopes to keep doing business with them long-term, offering to trade either with money or through bartering. Russ feels deep gratitude for this arrangement, and Carol's father asks the merchant if he could inquire about people willing to settle in the village. The merchant considers this, noting that many villages have been ruined lately, so some might be seeking a calm place to live. However, he points out that the Forbidden Forest might not qualify as peaceful. Suggesting they think about moving elsewhere, he prompts Yoshio, who finds the idea sensible since leaving the forest wouldn't end the game. Still, Yoshio senses that relocating to another village might break the game's rules. He wonders if the villagers thriving elsewhere would count as a win and decides their happiness matters more than his wish to keep playing. Whatever they choose, he'll support it without pushing them using a prophecy. Russ speaks up, saying he wants to stay, viewing life on land guarded by the god of fate as a divine task. His wife sees staying with him as her responsibility, while Carol wishes to remain with everyone. Kem plans to live out her days there, Gam vows to protect them all, and Moose, unfamiliar with the world outside the forest, refuses to abandon the land where her brothers perished. The merchant respects their choice and pledges to find others willing to join the village. Shaking hands with Russ, he promises to return in a few days with their requested supplies, leaving Yoshio grateful for their decision to stay. Yoshio sends a prophecy as the Bible glows, and Kem opens it to read aloud, welcoming Mas to the village on behalf of the god of fate, honoring the fallen and wishing her well. Please, Yoshio steps back from his desk, confident they're ready for winter, and might even gain more help. Turning to the lizard, he asks what name it likes, first suggesting Lizardosaurus, which it strongly dislikes, before proposing Destiny as a nod to their shared journey. In the village of fate, a golden lizard rises energetically while Yoshio, alone in his room, lets out a sigh as he gazes at his smartphone. He's texting C again after years of silence, feeling genuinely glad to reconnect but unsure how to maintain contact with her now. A decade ago, when C landed a job at a big company, Yoshio felt both excited and annoyed about her success. After he couldn't find a job himself, he cut off all communication with her and avoided meeting her face to face. Yoshio feels bad and wonders if someone like him deserves to chat with C again like nothing happened, yet he doesn't want to drift apart from her either. He's unsure what to do, struggling to talk to anyone outside his family, and wishes Gams could show him how to connect with others. In the village, Carol asks a warrior what he's up to, reacting much like Kem when she learns he's hunting with Mas. Still, she wishes him well, and he pats her head in response. Yoshio can't pick up anything from this because he thinks only good-looking guys can pat a girl's head without it seeing a nod. He then turns to Ruse, hoping the ex-merchant can chat like a mature adult. Russ is busy making a list of what they can offer Doll and what they need in return, happy the merchant keen to trade. Lila sees this as a divine hint for her husband not to overwork, but he feels driven to keep up with Gan's efforts. It bothers Ruse that he's useless despite being older, and Yoshio understands this when he compares himself to Gams too. He sees Russ pushing himself with unfamiliar physical tasks and confesses he's worried Gams might steal Carol away. His wife teases that it's already too late but reassures him it's fine since he has her, leaving Yoshio jealous. Neither exchange helps him, so he thinks about finding someone to help him grasp a woman's heart. His sister would just mock him, and though one of his gaming pals claims to charm women, he's always online. Yoshio remembers he didn't send a prophecy that day, and with nothing specific to say, considers using this to his advantage. Back in the village, Kem announces a new prophecy to the group. As they gather, she shares that the god of fate wants their input on a young believer's serious romantic issue. The god admits human love is beyond his understanding, leaving the villagers puzzled by this strange prophecy. Yoshio worries he messed up with such an ungodly message, feeling silly for asking video game characters about love, but they're all he has. Unlike the others, Carol is excited about the consultation and wants to seek advice later, though Kem starts debating who should speak to the deity. Layla in to stop them. Layla reminds everyone of their god's request, seeing it as a kind chance to thank him for his ongoing help. Mus joins in, complaining that an elf like her can't grasp romance, and Yoshio notices the women are eager to assist with his problem. Lila asks Kem for more details, and the priestess explains that the man has a childhood friend who's more than a friend but not quite a lover. Kem finds it sweet that he's had someone close for so long. Carol understands the man but teases her, hinting that he might grow bored of her after so much time together. Once Alice stops the argument, Kem explains to everyone that the man has been apart from his childhood friend for years, though they've recently reconnected. Still, he's unsure how to talk to her and wants advice on rebuilding their old bond. Carol quickly volunteers, claiming she's very popular with the men in the village, unlike him, who she says frightens them off with her bold attitude. Carol suggests the man should simply ask his friend on a date, arguing it's not too forward since they were close before. She adds that if it fails, it's a lost cause anyway, so giving up is fine. Her words sting Yosh as he reads them online. Kem agrees that spending fun time together could quickly bridge the distance between them, more than stiff conversations ever would. Layla supports this, remembering how her husband's date invitation sparked their relationship, even when they weren't close yet, making Russ turn red with shyness. Miss shares that elves take years to nurture love and rarely take bold steps, so she doubts she's a good example. Thinking back, Yoshio recalls how he and Saki often hung out in the past, but now things feel different. Yoshio wonders what dates suit people his age, and if Saki even wants that. Ken just wants someone to happily stay with her. Layla adds it's charming when a man tries too hard on a date to be gallant and messes up, poking fun at her husband again. Yoshio wants to match the villagers' excitement, but a date still feels out of reach for him. Taking their advice, Yoshio grabs his phone and drafts messages to ask Saki to hang out that day. He settles on a simple invite, clutching his phone hopefully, thinking he did well. At a cafe, Saki sees his text and smiles. Yosh is shocked she replies so fast, then panics realizing he asked her out on a weekday, showing how out of touch he is with normal life. He feels both let down and relieved since her reply suggests she's open to his invites, encouraging him to try again. The next day, Layla, Kem, and Carol wash clothes outside the cave. The priestess wonders about the previous day's prophecy, sure the god of fate is mocking other believers too, and asks how it went for the man. Seeing this, Yoshio decides to share the outcome. Yoshio invents some details and thanks them. As the Bible glows, Sem opens it, saying they helped since the man's next date invite should succeed. Inside, Yoshio appreciates the villagers' enthusiasm for his problem. It reminds him of his mother and Saki getting hooked on TV dramas. He realizes the villagers create excitement, having worked so hard to protect their village until now. They'd never had a chance to enjoy entertainment, so it's understandable that they'd feel overwhelmed by it, though he's a bit reluctant to share his lack of knowledge and discomfort. Still, he wants to keep talking about love for now. The following day, he shares another love prophecy with the villagers, explaining that the man has arranged to go out with his childhood friend, but isn't sure where to take her. He asks the villagers what places women might like. Ken spreads the good news and suggests the man take her to the theater. Lila thinks it's sweet, remembering how her first date with Russ was at a theater with a love story, and the dark seating added to the charm. Carol and most support the idea, and Yoshio decides a movie could work since it's already nighttime. He figures she's probably heading home and tells himself he needs to follow their advice to keep the villagers from feeling let down, planning to update them later. C picks up his call, surprised to hear from him, and Yoshio musters the nerve to ask her out for her next free day. The next day, Kem reads the latest prophecy aloud, where Yoshio thanks the villagers for their help, noting that the young man's bond with his friend has grown stronger. With the advice session done, he's thankful for their support but feels a pang of regret about returning to how things were, thinking it'd be better if life stayed this positive. Hoping the village prospers and stays safe so his prophecies can always carry calm, happy messages, he puts on his overalls and sets out to earn money for the village and his date, excited to step into the wider world. One night, Yoshio comes home from work and gets a text from Saki asking him to pick her up at the bus stops and she'll arrive late. He agrees right away, remembering there's a convenience store nearby and planning to grab some candy and juice while he's there. He heads out to the store, looking for his backpack as Destiny watches it closely. Pulling up his hood, he walks over and decides to pop inside before his sister arrives. But he stops cold at the door when he spots a familiar man leaving, a sharp pain hitting his stomach as a memory floods back. Years ago, his sister had mentioned a stalker always watching her, and he'd gone with her to confront the guy, only to discover he looked like a normal kid. Thinking he could scare the kid off by yelling as an adult college student, he demanded the stalker stay away from Saki. Annoyed by the lack of response, Yoshio grabbed the kid's collar, but the kid mumbled something unclear before stabbing him in the stomach with a butterfly knife. As he collapsed, bleeding, the kid glared wildly and warned him to stay out of his way, leaving Yoshio unable to protect his sister. Now seeing the stalker again isn't surprising since it's his hometown, but running into him at the convenience store by the bus stop Saki uses feels too convenient. Yoshio decides this man must be the stalker again. Though he thinks about calling the police, he remembers they'd said they couldn't act without a real incident. With little time to decide, Saki's bus arriving soon, he knows he can't let her face this alone. Yoshio didn't want his sister to live in fear any longer, so he stepped outside to deal with the situation, spotting two young men in the parking lot. He intended to yell to get their attention if things escalated. As he neared the supposed stalker, he asked if he was Yoshio Naga. The man turned, curious about who Yosh might be, and Yoshio, once a tidy person, mentioned the man's cooperation with his sister's case. Surprised, the man realized Yoshio was Saki's older brother. Yoshio said hello, curious about the man's reaction to this unexpected meeting. However, Yoshio Naga bowed, expressing regret and admitting that he had caused trouble. Yoshio Naga's apology for the past mess left Yoshio a bit stunned, and he said sorry too for his earlier harsh words, admitting he should have thought more before speaking. Yoshio Naga insisted his actions, stalking Saki and harming her brother, were beyond forgiveness, and he was there to make amends. A surprised Yoshio asked him to raise his head, wondering how much trauma he thought the event caused. Though tempted to speak his mind, Yoshio held back. Yoshio focused on keeping Saki safe, still wary about meeting Yoshio Naga so late in such a spot. Yoshio Naga explained it was the only nearby convenience store, and he'd stop by after work. From their talk, Yoshio Naga appeared to be just a kind young man, and compared to him, the scruffy Yoshio might seem like the stalker. After apologizing for startling him, Yoshio firmly told him to stay away from his sister. Yoshio Naga, looking regretful, confessed his affection for her had gotten out of control. That affection had driven his past actions, but he hadn't approached her since getting out, he claimed. Yoshio then got straight to the point, asking why he was still following her. When a young man seemed shocked, Yoshio brought up the restraining order, saying this was the second time he'd spotted him, the first being when he fled the store earlier. It was a bluff. Yoshio wasn't sure if it was in that time, but he felt confident it was. Yoshio's gamble worked as Yoshio Naga's polite mask dropped, realizing he'd been caught. He admitted his reform school reflection was fake, yelling that he'd only been heading home, waiting for her, when Yoshio confronted him looking tough, which made him snap and stab him. Clutching Yoshio's hair, he shouted that the siblings had ruined his life, holding them responsible. Seeing the man's madness, Yoshio warned him to leave Saki alone, but the stalker wasn't deterred or ready to drop his fixation on her. When Yoshio threatened to call the police, Yoshio Naga scoffed, saying it was pointless. He'd learned tricks in reform school to commit crimes the cops couldn't pin on him, and had made new allies there. Alarmed, Yoshio asked what he aimed to achieve by stalking her, and he answered that it was all for love. He'd once loved her deeply but was too shy to confess, he explained. After his arrest, he had time to plan what he'd do if they met again, first thinking of saying sorry and seeking forgiveness, then considering disappearing and wishing her well from a distance. But as time dragged on without seeing her, his mind turned dark. Now even picturing her felt risky, and he dreamed of her on her knees, pleading, wanting to see her tears, as Yoshio listened in horror. Yoshio is stunned and realizes he can't simply ignore this dangerous person, wanting to flee but unwilling to carry more regrets or pretend his past doesn't exist, even if it means risking his life to confront this menace. As he steps closer, Yoshio Naga retreats slightly and mocks him, warning that attacking could bring police trouble for Yoshio. But Yoshio isn't naive. He's been quietly recording everything on his smartphone from the beginning. Unaware of this, Yoshio Naga keeps taunting him, claiming he's now a law-abiding citizen and suggesting it's destiny they met on the day he'll carry out his keen, even considering kidnapping Yoshio too. Then Yoshio spots two men from the parking lot nearing, and Yoshio Naga reveals they're old reform school pals who plan to abduct Saki and exploit her, originally intending to record it and send the video to Yoshio for revenge, though now they aim to perform it live. The thugs draw their weapons, and though Yoshio burns with anger and wants to lash out, he knows facing three opponents makes recklessness dangerous. It's late at night with no one nearby, so yelling for help would be useless. Scared but bolstered by memories of Gams and others battling worse threats, he steels himself against these mere humans. One thug remarks on Yoshio's resolve despite their numbers and weapons, observing his strong build, and Yoshio silently credits his training for their wariness. He cautions them that their actions won't go unpunished, but Yoshio Naga boasts that his friends are tied to a rough gang that'll smooth things over. Trapped, Yoshio weighs escaping to the convenience store, where the thugs couldn't act, and calling the police with his recording and mention of their arms, stun gun, baton, and knife, forcing their arrest. Facing a knife that could kill up close or a stun gun that'd leave him helpless, Yoshio picks the baton wielder as his target, catching him off guard, locking his attack, and hurling him into another thug. He dodges the knife and bolts, but just as freedom seems near, two more thugs blocked his path to the store. Cornered again in the parking lot, Yoshio Naga suggests crippling his legs to stop him escaping. And with 5 foes now, Yoshio feels doomed. Yet as a thug moves to strike, he suddenly chokes and collapses, followed by another doing the same, while the remaining 2 weep uncontrollably as if hit by tear gas, all 4 soon helpless on the ground. Yoshio Naga, still standing, demands to know what Yoshio did, but though puzzled himself, Yoshio seizes the moment, boldly warning that he wouldn't challenge a past betrayer unprepared, urging Yoshio Naga to get his crew to a hospital or face the same fate. His bluff fails and Yoshio Naga charges with a knife, ready to stab. Yoshio braces for impact, but just in time, Yoshio Naga succumbs to the same mysterious affliction, collapsing in a choking, foaming heap. Bewildered, Yoshio checks them, confirming they're not faking, and though he'd happily leave them there, he worries about being blamed if they die. Heading into the convenience store, he alerts the staff about the situation outside. 5 men have fallen outside, foam coming from their mouths, waiting for someone to call an ambulance. Saki gets off the bus at a stop near the convenience store, and only then notices the chaos in the parking lot. She watches as multiple ambulances speed to and from the area. Getting nearer, she sees paramedics giving first aid to several men and loading them onto stretchers, while police officers take statements from people nearby. To her shock, she spots her big brother talking to an officer about what happened. The policeman questioned her brother about how he knows the 5 men, but the young man hesitates to give a clear reply. Becoming doubtful, the officer asks to check Yoshi's things and pats him down as he lifts his hands. Saki walks up while the officer requests to look in her brother's bag, which she allows. Yoshio tells her the men in the parking lot got sick from food or something, and urges her to go home while he deals with the police, mentioning he already called their father to come get her. Their talk gets interrupted when the officer yells in surprise, and to Yoshio's amazement, Destiny, his pet lizard, crawls out of his backpack. Picking it up, he explains it's just his pet, but the stunned officer still asks Yoshio to come to the station to answer questions about what happened. Yoshio agrees but requests to give the lizard to his sister to take home. He hands Destiny to Saki, promising to explain everything later as he leaves with the officer. In the end, the police questioning went on until the next morning. Yoshio described the situation the officers found when they arrived and shared details about Yoshio Naga, a past stalker who planned to attack his little sister. He plays a recording from his smartphone as evidence, and the police take action based on it, Luckily, the recording cuts off partway, so the moment he threatened Yoshio Naga isn't captured, letting him avoid trouble. Leaving the police station, Yoshio stretches and squints at the rising sun, saying how great it feels to be out of prison, a line he always wanted to use. He doesn't notice his father and sister watching him. Saki, concerned by his words, asks if he's okay mentally, but their father, once a young man himself, gets why he'd say that. Embarrassed, Yoshio realizes it's a work day and asks if they're skipping work, but Saki responds. She tells him they came to pick him up because they were worried. She says sorry, feeling she pulled him into this mess after asking him to get her, but he comforts her. Their father suggests they head home instead of chatting outside the police station. On the drive, Yoshio wonders how much to tell his family, knowing they'll learn about the stalker eventually, even if he hides it. Saki might get questioned too, so he decides telling them first will soften the blow. Sighing, he shares the story with them. After hearing it, Saki hits the car door in anger, furious that her old stalker hasn't changed and has even improved his creepy skills. Her father tells her to relax, then quietly scolds Yoshio for being reckless. Though his tone is soft, his words hit hard, and Yoshio can sense he's holding back fury. Looking back, Yoshio sees it was a mistake to think lightly of the situation. Yoshio Naga was left alone, pondering what kind of torment Saki and he might have faced if the thugs hadn't suddenly fallen ill. His father remarked that he had done everything he could to shield his younger sister, expressing his pride as a parent. Caught off guard by this rare display of warmth and approval, Yoshio silently began to cry. His father then commented on how strange it was that the thugs had been struck down by food poisoning right at that moment. Though he didn't believe in God, he felt a sudden urge to give thanks for this fortunate turn of events, and his son nodded in agreement. The collapse of the 5 men was initially labeled as food poisoning, since they had eaten oysters earlier that day to celebrate their actions. This could explain how they got sick, but Yoshio wasn't convinced it was that straightforward. While food poisoning might account for the foam around their mouths, it didn't explain the choking or the irritated eyes they suffered. It was almost as if they'd been exposed to some kind of toxic gas. Even more puzzling, Yoshio walked away completely unharmed. When he got home, he was met by his mother's concerned greeting. His mother asked anxiously if he was okay, and after calming her fears he went upstairs and looked at Destiny, his lizard. He remembered it had been with him at the scene and briefly wondered if it could have caused the incident in the parking lot. Dismissing the idea as ridiculous, he turned to his computer to check on the village game. As it started, he saw the villagers going about their daily routines with energy, and he felt grateful to them. Their bravery had somehow given him the strength to protect his sister. With that thought, he went to bed. Exhausted from the day before, he fell asleep quickly, only to be woken 6 hours later by his mother calling his name. Heading downstairs, he wondered if another package had arrived, but he was surprised when his mother said he had a visitor who had brought an appetizer to the guest room. Confused, he heard Saki's voice coming from there and was stunned to see her waiting for him. She explained that she'd taken the day off to visit and check on him and Saki after learning about their ordeal. Moved by her concern, he sat down and assured her he was perfectly fine. As they all sat together, he realized it had been a while since they've last had a chance to meet like this. Noticing the room had grown quiet after C and Saki's lively chatter faded upon his arrival, he decided to lighten the mood. C then shared that his sister had told her everything about the incident, stumbling over her words as she hesitated to call him the familiar Yashi instead of something more formal. He quickly told her Yashi was fine. Relieved, she smiled, and they both blushed, but Saki, looking a bit down, broke the moment by asking if the situation was fully resolved. Yoshio felt confident it was, pointing out that the thugs, now in the hospital, had incriminating messages on their phones and would be arrested once released. Saki felt better hearing this and was surprised when her brother insisted she call him right away if anything else happened. C beamed, happy to see the siblings getting along again. As the siblings acknowledged their improved bond, C's eyes widened as she asked if he'd be willing to be friends with her again. He agreed instantly, surprised she even felt the need to ask, but then recalled how he deliberately avoided her for the past decade despite their recent talks. Realizing how unfair he'd been, he admitted he always knew he'd have to apologize to her in person someday. With a deep bow, he sincerely said sorry for pushing her away back then, assuring her he was ready to be friends now. C forgives him right away, just like in the happy times before, teasing him a little. When he confesses he thought she despised him, she explains she left town due to a job move shortly after the incident and often traveled for work. After a brief hesitation, she almost shares her feelings with him, while Saki looks at her blankly. C tries to switch topics but suddenly yells in fright, pointing behind Yoshio. He spins around startled only to see Destiny watching them, leaving Saki intrigued. Saki is thrilled to see the cute lizard and asks to touch it, but C is clearly scared of it. Yoshio remembers she always disliked reptiles and amphibians. He comforts her, saying Destiny is gone, but when she opens her eyes, relieved, she sees Yoshio holding the lizard right in front of her. She shrieks loudly, runs to hide, and tearfully tells him to stop being childish, admitting she always hated that side of him. Surprised, Yoshio says sorry while his sister teases him, and meanwhile, Yamamoto fumes. In his tiny apartment, Yamamoto glares at his phone, seeing one of his bases was unexpectedly destroyed. He learns 3 people spotted goblins that attacked Fate Village camping in his base. He grumbles about spending tons of money on the game and blames Yoshio for ruining things 3 days after they met. Doll keeps his promise and returns to trade with the villagers, who are thrilled. He brings the requested goods and some folks eager to join them. At his signal, 2 red panda beast folk, dressed as adventurers, step out of his wagon. The merchant presents them as Kan and Ron, a married pair. Yoshio feels anxious, unsure how the villagers will take it, but they greet the newcomers kindly. Doll tells them the couple are talented craftsmen, good at working with wood and somewhat skilled with stone and metal too. They once lived in the cave, learning from dwarves who mined there. Yoshio is pleased to hear they're skilled craftsmen, knowing it's vital for the village's growth, and finds their presence calming just to look at. Days go by since Kan and Ron arrived, and with no space left in the cave, the villagers extend their fences. The red pandas build a hut for themselves inside the new area. They're now working hard to make a food storehouse with gams and roos, and as an extra surprise, Yoshio discovers something exciting. He's thrilled to learn Kan and Ron are spear experts, and since most beast folk have stronger bodies than humans, they could be great fighters. While the construction goes on, Mouse has been gathering herbs. A bit earlier, Yoshio got a package from the villagers with a drug file as a gift. Based on what they sent in so far, he thinks the medicine is safe, but he's still nervous about trying it. Even so, he appreciates the thought and keeps it as a lucky charm. Plans are underway for the evil god's temptation, and the villagers' fighting skills are decent. As long as Yoshio sticks to his task until the month ends, he'll gain enough points to call another golem. Last time he felt anxious about it, but now he's excited for the month's end. Some days later, after finishing their morning cleaning job, Yoshio's boss says the team will eat lunch, then go to the afternoon job, rest in the van, and later start the night shift, which everyone agrees to during the busy cleaning season. At year's end, clean jobs pile up from all over, turning December into a wild mess for workers. They start early in the morning and sometimes don't stop until 4:00 a.m. When it gets that hectic, they get the next day off, but Yoshio's body is wearing out. He took the job determined not to give up, yet lately he's been strongly tempted to skip it. Tired, Yoshio comes home, skips dinner despite his mom cooking, and apologizes as he heads to his room. Though his mother made food, Yoshio goes to his room, says hi to Destiny, and flops onto his bed face first. He marvels at how amazing it is that people go to work daily without fail, something he's never done, and believes they deserve his admiration. He feels those who work steadily in society without missing a day should give themselves more credit. The next morning, his phone alarm wakes him. He delays it, hesitant to rise, then checks on the Village of Fate, where he sees Carol praying at the god's altar. Carol offers her favorite breakfast fruit to the god of fate, praying everyone stays safe, even if monsters show up during the evil god's temptation. Inspired by her, Yoshio gets up and readies for work. While mopping the floor, exhausted, he hears someone shout that he's not working hard enough. He turns to see his angry boss glaring his way and starts to say sorry, but Yamamoto apologizes first, making Yoshio realize he wasn't the one being scolded. Their boss notices Yamamoto has been looking worn out lately and gently suggests he take a break if he's unwell. But the tired young man says he's okay, just sleepless, and needs the cash. Yoshio has seen Yamamoto acting off recently. He used to be cheerful and talkative, but now he's glued to his video game even on breaks and barely speaks. Plus he gives Yoshio odd stares. During a break, Yoshio steps up to address it. Yoshio gets a chance to visit the Village of Fate, but he's worried about Yamamoto, though he can't focus on anyone else right now. Out of nowhere, a young man shows up behind him and comments on how caught up he seems in his game. Yoshio brushes it off, saying he was just messing around in his spare time. After walking a few steps, Yamamoto explains that the game's purpose is to destroy enemy bases, and you can boost the number of monsters you command by spending money, catching Yoshio's attention. Yamamoto says it's like a game where you take over bases, but his coworker spins around with a wild expression, saying he loves how the aim is to play the bad guy who wipes out villages. He raves about the game's visuals, explaining that you're cast as an evil god who wins by crushing humanity, which shocks Yoshio. Yamamoto goes on, describing a setup where you collect points by beating foes and use them to call up monsters, plus there's a payment option to get even more. He adds that points pile up fast if you dump in lots of cash, admitting he's blown most of his salary on it. Yoshio can picture a game like that if you're an evil god, and he felt other players' presence during the Mus event, so it's not shocking if some play as evil gods too. Yamamoto isn't finished, revealing there's a reward system. Crushing an enemy base nets tons of points, and you can even trade them in for something more. Yoshio figures out it's real money, which makes sense since the Village of Fate sent him real offerings. Yamamoto shares that he once made 5 million yen from the game, opening up about his life. His family was poor, and after his dad disappeared, leaving debt behind, he had to quit high school to work. Just when he thought he cleared his father's debt, his mom's new partner ran off, dumping more debt on him. Even though some might argue a kid shouldn't have to cover their parents' debts, Yamamoto insists they're still his parents. He's angry at how unfair it feels. Despite pulling himself up with his earnings, he can't clear the debt, having given up his teenage and young adult years for it. Letting it go would feel pointless, and Yoshio's at a loss for words. Sure, there must be ways for a kid to escape that burden. Yoshio thinks a child shouldn't have to pay back what their parents owe, but he can't fault Yamamoto for his view, finding it both weak and impressive. Yamamoto keeps talking, saying this new income stream let him nearly wipe out his debt. The game's his big break, one he's grabbed despite lacking skills or schooling. When Yoshio asks why he's sharing this, Yamamoto quietly admits he scans, revealing his true role. He's an evil god player, and Yoshio wonders if he'd spotted him as a rival player, realizing they've been clashing all along. Now, Yamamoto plans to face him in the evil god's temptation, where a game over means quitting entirely. As Yamamoto walks off, Yoshio ponders if he shared his story to push him out of the game. It might be Yamamoto's only light in a dark life, but the same holds true for him. For Yoshio, life started moving forward after finding this game, reuniting with family, Saki, and landing a job. The villagers are like his supporters, so he can't just let them perish. Set on not giving up, Yoshio vows to take on Yamamoto one-on-one and fight to the finish. On December 30th, the day before the evil god's temptation, he's home after a long workday, and his boss thanks him, appreciating his solid effort. Yamamoto hopes he can rely on his friends again next year, and while Misaki offers her congratulations and wishes him well for the year ahead, he stays quiet and distant, bowing respectfully. He expresses gratitude to them and hopes they can all work together smoothly in the future, also wishing them a good year. The dark influence of the evil god is growing closer, and though he doesn't want to clash with Yamamoto, he knows a confrontation is inevitable as long as he keeps playing Village of Fate. When he gets home, he finds it deserted, as his family has left to visit their grandparents for the new year. He had considered joining his grandparents for the holiday but chose to stay behind to concentrate on his game the following day. To his surprise, a female voice greets him as he enters, and he follows a light to the kitchen where C is nearly finished preparing dinner. Noticing his puzzled look, she explains that his mom asked her to handle his meals. Seeing his reaction, she wonders if he's not hungry, but he quickly assures her he's starving, silently grateful to his mother for arranging this just as he starts to ask about the meal. As he's about to inquire what's cooking, he spots Destiny, his lizard, loose again and sneaking into the kitchen. He swiftly grabs it off the floor, warning it that C isn't comfortable with lizards and urging it to behave. The lizard ignores him, and he realizes he's the only one around to feed it since everyone else is away. He pleads with Destiny to wait in his room, promising extra food and a choice of fruits to seal the deal. With that settled, he rushes upstairs, claiming he needs to change. After the meal is ready, he sits down with C at the table and starts eating, complimenting the food, especially the comforting flavor of the miso soup. He playfully suggests she teach his little sister, Saki, to cook, but C reveals Saki has already been taking lessons from her and is getting better at making rolled omelets, which surprises Yoshio completely. Gazing at him warmly, she asks if she can come by again tomorrow. Caught off guard, he says he'd appreciate it, though she shouldn't feel obligated. He adds that if she doesn't mind spending so much time with him, she's always welcome, and Saki agrees, saying she has plenty of free time anyway. She proposes they make soba for New Year's Eve, and as she keeps serving him food, Yoshio wonders if it's okay to feel so content. On December 31st, the evil god's temptation arrives, and Yoshio sits at his monitor, watching the villagers prepare for the final showdown. As the battle kicks off, he notices Destiny at his desk, strokes its head, and assures it they'll face this together. At 1 p.m., Moose, perched on the watchtower, spots the first enemies approaching and warns everyone of 5 black dogs and 5 fierce boars heading their way. An alert pops up, signaling the start of the evil god's temptation event. As the beasts rush forward, Moose shoots her bow, killing the first black dog, but the others scatter to avoid more arrows. The wider fencing makes it tougher for the villagers to protect, though they plan ahead. To counter the attack, the ground collapses under the creatures as they near, and several plummet to their deaths. The week before, Yoshio had suggested in a prophecy that they dig deep pitfalls, lining the bottoms with sharp stakes to catch the enemies. Some die instantly, while Moose handles the rest. For the ferocious boars and their reckless charges, they set up stakes at head height to let the beasts impale themselves. The real challenge comes from the black dogs, whose strength allows them to jump over the traps. Musk takes down another fierce boar beyond the fence, where some creatures even have deadly fangs, and alerts everyone that 3 black dogs are nearing the enclosure's boundary. Gams and Ron grip their weapons tightly, bracing themselves for the attack, and swiftly cut down the dogs as they jump over the fence with ruthless precision. After wiping out the initial group, Yoshio comments that the extra help has made the area feel totally safe, leaving no threats behind. Seizing the moment, Gams instructs the villagers to get ready for the next challenge. The villagers begin resetting the pitfalls, working together under Yoshi's wise guidance. These traps might fail again if Yamamoto gains full power over the creatures, but it seems he can only give them basic orders, so the pitfalls should still be effective. Yoshio understands that the monsters will grow tougher as night falls, and both sides are testing each other's strengths while trying to save energy for the relentless battles ahead throughout the evening. The creatures keep launching fierce assaults on the village, but the villagers fight back hard, killing and pushing them away. During breaks between the attacks, those not fighting bring food and water to the defenders, giving them a chance to rest and recharge. Yoshio feels good about how things are going so far, as everything has run smoothly, and he still has the golem ready as a backup, making him optimistic about ending this before Saki arrives for the night. Looking at the dead monsters, he starts to think about Yamamoto's situation. Yoshio wonders how Yamamoto is holding up and considers contacting him, but decides against it, figuring Yamamoto would see it as a taunt, even if their real-life bond broke apart. Having chosen to safeguard the game and the villagers, Yoshio tells himself to stay focused and firm up his determination for what lies ahead. As the clock nears 5:30, he finds it odd that no monsters had attacked for a full hour, even after the last wave tied to the evil god's temptation, marking the longest pause yet and sparking hope. Layla speculates that Gams and the team might have already beaten all the foes, and Russ thinks the enemy gave up after realizing their attacks were pointless, but Gams stays cautious. Yoshio agrees, believing Yamamoto has put everything into this fight and won't back down easily. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes from downstairs in his house, prompting Yoshio to stand and check it out, wondering if Saki showed up early and calling her name. Not seeing her in the kitchen, he heads to the living room to look further. Yoshio stops dead in his tracks when he opens the door, spotting broken glass from the shattered sliding door, and a burglar in a ski mask standing in the room, staring at him. Stunned, he starts pulling his phone out to call the police, but then he notices hair sticking out from under the mask and recognizes the intruder, calling out Yamamoto's name, which makes him smack. A few months back, Yamamoto had come home to his shabby apartment and found a surprise envelope in his mailbox. Intrigued, he opened it inside his place. Inside, Yamamoto read the letter and was shocked to discover he'd been picked as a beta tester for a game called Destruction Impulse, though he didn't remember signing up for it. With some spare time, he decided to try it out and scanned the QR code with his phone. Like Yoshio, he was instantly amazed by the game's incredibly lifelike graphics, which seemed full of potential. He then got to know the game's rules, learning he could spawn monsters and direct them to attack enemy targets. Yamamoto initially explored a game with bases but chose to skip it when he realized he couldn't manage them himself. Later, a man pounded on his door, angrily insisting that Yamamoto pay this month's dues plus all past unpaid amounts, threatening consequences if he didn't settle everything. Calmly, Yamamoto transferred the money and asked if that resolved their issues, which the man agreed to once he saw the funds in his account. Surprised by the easy payment, the man questioned where Yamamoto got the cash, but Yamamoto brushed it off, promising to stay on time moving forward. After the man left, Yamamoto shut the door and laughed strangely, thrilled that the game Destruction Impulse had actually put money in his account. He'd ignored the game for a while but recently checked it again, discovering that his monsters had attacked a small enemy base and boosted his points. Looking into it, he learned those points could turn into real money, so he dove in hard, upgrading his monsters with premium features and targeting bigger bases. Making cash just by playing felt like a perfect dream to him, and though he didn't understand the game company's reasoning for such a generous setup, he figured he could wipe out his debts this way. Later, his boss introduced him and Misaki to Yoshio, a new coworker. Yamamoto noticed Yoshio's strong build but also his pale, sickly look and odd behavior. Still, he saw the young man's eagerness, though he doubted Yoshio would last long given the job's tough demands. Over time though, he came to respect Yoshio's hard work and positive attitude, seeing him as a solid junior colleague. During the next Evil God's Temptation event in the game, Yamamoto was outraged when he got crushed, expecting an easy win, and wondered about the powerful warrior who appeared at the end. He regretted sending his red Cyclops to the Elven village instead of that fight. Learning Yoshio liked video games, he thought they might bond, but was stunned to find out Yoshio's gain had destroyed his costly red Cyclops, tying back to an earlier village raid. Coming home from work, he assessed his position and realized he'd need to protect his own base from now on. With his weakened forces, he couldn't waste points as freely as before. Then he spotted Yoshio playing a game on his phone, and was floored to see it was the same one. Destruction Impulse, but on the enemy side. Suspicion crept in, making him wonder if Yoshio had known all along and was secretly mocking him. Furious, he confronted Yoshio at work, admitting he knew they were rivals in the game. During that Evil God's Temptation day, Yamamoto was set on using the game to change his life and wouldn't let anyone stop him. When the first wave hit, he was livid to find Yoshio using sneaky traps and shocked that Yoshio's power had grown so much since their last clash, leaving him stressed and chain-smoking from the pressure. As the day wore on, he puffed on cigarettes while coming to terms with the fact that his plan to slowly wear down his opponent wouldn't succeed against such smart enemies. He thought about pouring cash into strengthening his troops right away, but he knew Yoshio likely had a hidden advantage with the golem. Unsure of his next move, he figured he could come out on top if Yoshio was out of the picture for a bit. His eyes caught the baseball bat leaning against the wall, tempting him, but he stopped himself, recognizing how twisted that idea was. He understood that acting on it would betray the honest, diligent life he'd always led, so he told himself to relax, still hopeful he could win since his monster grew stronger at night. Out of cigarettes, he decided to step out to buy more and clear his head. But the moment he opened the door, he bumped into an odd man in sunglasses and a leather jacket. When he asked who the guy was, the stranger countered by asking if Yamamoto believed in gods, hinting he might be tied to something unusual. Suspecting the man belonged to some religious group, Yamamoto told him to get lost, but he couldn't help sizing up his clothes and vibe, noting he didn't seem like a typical believer. Offended by the remark, the man said he did believe in gods, specifically the wicked ones. With a flick of his hand, he pulled off a strange hypnotic move that left Yamamoto baffled. Now in the present, Yamamoto finds himself in Yoshio's living room, gripping a crowbar, while his coworker and rival calls his name. The dazed young man peels off his ski mask, staring with a troubled look as Yoshio, catching him in the act, asks what he's up to and urges him to drop the weapon, promising to brush it off as a simple scare if he complies. With a creepy grin, Yamamoto says Yoshio knows why he's there, and Yoshio admits he's meddling with the game, vowing not to get tough if Yamamoto backs off, asking him to wait out the evil god's influence calmly. Still trying to talk sense into him, Yoshio warns him not to be stupid and points out he's breaking the law, but Yamamoto snaps back, asking if Yoshio would quit the game that he sincerely begged him to, something Yoshio can't bring himself to do. Yamamoto then lays out his cover story. He'll say he got drunk, came over to chill at a coworker's place, and they fought, adding that the crowbar came from Yoshio's own shed. Though Yoshio insists that excuse won't hold up, Yamamoto argues people will buy it since he's more trusted in society. He's been a hard worker, paying off his parents' debt with good behavior and a solid reputation, while Yoshio's been off the radar for 10 years, leaving him with no social standing. No one would even question whose story holds more weight. Yamamoto presses on, saying he doesn't want to harm Yoshio either since a criminal record would ruin him too. He suggests Yoshio play along and throw the game, offering to split half the raid's cash with him in exchange. For Yoshio, it's an enticing deal. No injuries, some money, and Yamamoto would go back to being his friendly coworker, with the only loss being the village of fate fading from his routine. Skeptical, Yoshio locks eyes with him and poses one question, asking if Yamamoto feels no remorse at all. When asked if he felt guilt for attacking the village in the game, or if seeing such lifelike characters die stirred any thoughts, Yamamoto responds that despite the vivid graphics, it's just a game to him. He adds that even if they were real people, they'd be strangers like the casualties he sees on Warzone news reports. Yoshio confesses he rarely feels shaken by the gruesome scenes on TV, but he argues that the game's NPCs work hard to live normal lives, far surpassing a reclusive shut-in like himself. Hearing this, Yamamoto questions if Yoshio is foolish, lamenting their inability to see eye to eye. When pressed to rethink his stance, he snaps, furious, explaining he's always suffered because of his awful family and the massive debt they dumped on him. Angrily, he challenges whether Yoshio, who's had an easy life, really grasps the worth of money. Yamamoto points out he's gone 10 years without working and asks if Yoshio even knows how much it costs yearly to sustain him or how much his family sacrificed to support him with their earnings. Yoshio falls silent, unable to respond. He's always made excuses, blaming society, bad luck, or convincing himself it's fine to be a NEET since he's not hurting anyone, leaving him with no defense against Yamamoto's words. Yamamoto continues, saying this is the opportunity he's finally grabbed, a man with no schooling or standout skills. He knows well that without a decent college degree, society offers no good future. Yoshio can't counter this either, having squandered a privileged upbringing to become a lazy dropout who gave up every chance and realizes his words won't sway Yamamoto, lacking any weight. Surprise, Yamamoto asks why Yoshio is crying when he's the one who feels like breaking down. Yoshio retorts that Yamamoto is incredible, far more than he'll ever be. The younger man takes it as mockery from someone who's coasted through life, but Yoshio means it sincerely. He's horrified, realizing he's been fortunate all along despite a decade of doing nothing. He knows that if he'd woken up to this sooner, his life could have been entirely different. Instead, his inaction made him a burden. Yamamoto chuckles, dismissing Yoshio's words as hollow pity, and tells him if that's how he feels, he should quiet down and watch from the sidelines. He pulls out his smartphone, showing that the final attack in Saki Evil God's Temptation Saki has started back at the village. The ground shakes, and an alarmed Yamamoto climbs the watchtower, peering into the forest. He's stunned by what he sees emerging from the trees. A massive army of monsters, including black dogs, wild boars, goblins, and even powerful red cyclopes, heading their way. Yamamoto announces this is his all-out assault, having thrown in every troop and all his money. If he loses, it's over. He'll have nothing left to take even one base, so he hopes the village crumbles. Yoshio instinctively moves toward the computer, but Yamamoto brandishes a crowbar. At that moment, C arrives, an unassuming girl who heads to the living room, drawn by loud noises, thinking Yoshio had friends over. Startled, Yoshio shouts for her to keep away, but she opens the door anyway, bursting into the tense standoff between him and Yamamoto. Panicking at what she assumes is a burglary, she catches Yamamoto's attention. He swings the crowbar at her, and Yoshio leaps forward to intervene. Using his body as a shield, he pushes C to safety, but the crowbar slams into his shoulder blade, knocking him to the floor with a scream of agony. Yamamoto blames him for the chaos, and despite the searing pain in his back and his struggle to breathe, he shouts at C to escape, worried for her well-being. His friend freezes in place, but he yells again, urging her not to make his sacrifice pointless and to run. Spotting the open sliding door, she bolts toward it to find help. As Yamamoto starts chasing her, Yoshio grabs the hem of his trousers. Furious and blind with anger, Yamamoto turns and coolly asks if Yoshio is so desperate to look tough in front of a girl. Just before C escapes the house, she hears a horrible crunch and turns in terror to see Yamamoto pummeling Yoshio, who lies helpless on the floor. Yelling at him to stay out of his way, Yamamoto prepares a final strike while C watches, unable to intervene. Suddenly, the blow halts in midair, and Yamamoto stares at his hands, stunned, unable to move them. Saki stands in shock as Yamamoto flails the crowbar wildly, his body no longer under his control. Then he spots Destiny, the golden lizard, on the floor, having rushed to help its master. Suspecting it's behind his strange condition, Yamamoto threatens the lizard to back off, aiming the crowbar at it. Destiny releases a poisonous mist, forcing Yamamoto to drop the weapon, clutch his throat, and collapse to the ground. C hurries toward her friend. But then C notices Destiny crawling onto her slipper, and she stumbles backward in panic. The lizard climbs up her body until it reaches her face, flicking its tongue with a hiss, causing C to pass out. Yoshio witnesses everything, unable to speak or move his limbs, wondering if this is how he'll die, hoping C is safe before he loses consciousness. When he comes to, Destiny is in front of him, ripping a vial with its tail, a medicine Yoshio identifies as Moss's creation. Realizing the lizard wants him to drink it, he opens his mouth, and Destiny tips the vial's contents in. Instantly, a surge of energy courses through him, healing all his injuries. With a shout, he stands, clutching his chest, amazed that he can speak again, and that no bruises remain. There's no time to marvel at the potion though, and he quickly turns to check on C. C appears unharmed, just unconscious, while Yamamoto shows the same symptoms Yoshio and the others had earlier. It dawns on him that destiny saved him before too. Lifting the lizard, he confirms the Village of Fate is real, not just a game, and thanks it for rescuing him. Then, recalling the village, he checks his phone in a panic, seeing Yamamoto's forces closing in on the cave for a final attack. Gams directs everyone into the cave, knowing the monsters at the palisade are too numerous to fight. He orders the cave entrance sealed after the monsters destroy the palisade and all the structures inside. They enter the cave only to find the passage blocked with furniture, debris, and a wagon. As the monsters pound on the barricade, the villagers realize it's only a matter of time before they break through and attack. Still, Kemref clings to hope, refusing to surrender. Pointing at the altar, someone declares they still possess the divine protection of the god of fate, but since the statue doesn't move, the group feels doomed, accepting this might be their final moment. Gams expresses regret for not keeping his vow to shield everyone. Innocent Carol, confused by his words, doesn't understand what's happening. After a brief look from her mother, Mus takes a bottle from her bag and gives it to Carol, explaining it will relax her. Without hesitation, Carol drinks it, noticing its sweet flavor. She finds it delicious, and soon she drifts into a deep slumber. Leo lifts her up, carefully thanking the elf for this act, comforted that her daughter won't face any scary thoughts. The others stay quiet and serious. Cam, gazing at the altar, suggests they might still rescue one person despite their dire situation. Though rescue might not be the right word, she thinks it's better than dying there. She wonders aloud who they should choose, leaving everyone puzzled. The priestess clarifies that they haven't yet made an offering to the god of fate that day, proposing they could send Carol to God as a tribute. This idea stuns the group, who question if it's even doable. As the banging grows louder, Gams decides they're out of time to debate and agrees to try it. He places his daughter on the altar, and Lila prays to the god of fate to watch over her. Cam, meanwhile, seeks forgiveness for failing despite all the blessings received. Just as the little girl starts to glow, Yoshio triggers the summoning of the golem. The statue of the god of fate glows bright white, and the villagers watch in amazement as it awakens and lifts Carol into its arms. Having endured his own trials, Yoshio returns to aid his people in their desperate moment. Joy spreads as the god of fate's avatar appears, and after passing Carol to her mother, the golem moves toward the sealed entrance. Yoshio knows Yamamoto has thrown all his forces into this attack. Yamamoto's remaining troops surround the cave, meaning Yoshio could win if he defeats them all. He's willing to use up all his fate points for this, giving it everything he's got. The golem shoves the wagon forward with full force, smashing the monsters blocking the tunnel as it charges out into the open like a bolt of lightning. The golem then rushes ahead, tearing through the monster horde with a storm of steel, carving a path of ruin. Seeing the tunnel cleared, Gams calls the villagers to join their god in the fight. The golem sidesteps a punch from a red cyclops, viewing them as the bigger danger. When a black dog lunges at it, Mus quickly takes it down. Noticing the villagers have entered the battle, Yoshio leaves the lesser monsters to Gams and the others, targeting the 3 red cyclops instead. One tries to smash the golem with its mace, but the golem dodges and flips over the beast. The cyclops thrusts a sharp stake at it, which the golem deflects with its sword while pulling back, aware this will be a hard battle. Yoshio chooses to raise a dust cloud by having the golem hit the ground with its sword, blocking the monster's sight. Switching to long-range control, Yoshio still tracks the golem's position and orders it to cut at a cyclops' leg, knocking it down. Another swings its mace wildly, but the golem distracts it with a tossed pebble. The red cyclops launches another attack, but the golem swiftly avoids it, making the monster accidentally strike one of its own allies. Then the golem lands a fatal hit on the cyclops' neck, similar to a move from Attack on Titan, bringing down 2 monsters. Yoshio turns his attention to the last monster standing. The red cyclops rushes straight at the golem, but it dodges again and leaps up, striking a powerful blow that splits the monster's face in 2, killing it. Yoshio cheers for this victory and urges the villagers to give their all in their final effort as they press forward together. After a fierce battle, the villagers and the golem stand victorious in a field littered with defeated smaller monsters, having fought hard to survive. The other villagers come out of the cave, celebrating their success. Yoshio hears an alert from Yamamoto's phone and picks it up. Seeing a message that says the game is over for Yamamoto, his player rights are cancelled, and his memories of the game will be wiped, Yoshio is stunned, as no one ever told him this could happen. Though he's just been rescued by a magical lizard and brought back with a potion, Yoshio can't dismiss the idea as impossible anymore. He wonders if Yamamoto will lose all memory of that day's events too. Yoshio holds a deep resentment toward the enemy threatening his villagers, especially after his own terrifying outburst earlier, but he thinks Yamamoto's wild behavior might be due to the game. He can't picture Yamamoto being truly evil or acting that way on purpose. Yoshio then gently taps the unconscious Yamamoto on the shoulder. He tells Yamamoto it's getting late as Yamamoto stirs awake and recognizes him. Yoshio invents a tale, saying Yamamoto fainted from drinking too much at a year-end party at his house. Confused, Yamamoto admits his mind is blank, and he can't remember anything. While this could be suspicious if he were pretending, Yoshio believes the memory loss is real. Yamamoto shares that all he recalls is a strange man visiting his home that night and doing something odd to him. Yamamoto says the man hypnotized him, causing him to black out, and he can't match that with Yoshi's party story. At first, Yoshio thinks the hypnosis idea sounds far-fetched, but then he remembers Yamamoto's unusual eyes and wonders if someone controlled his friend to sabotage the game. This idea grows stronger when Yamamoto worries he might have gotten violent while drunk and offers to make amends. Yoshi's thoughts spin, questioning if another player might be behind this. He considers if someone would take the game this far or even gain unique abilities from it, but it's all too much to sort out. Smiling, he tells Yamamoto he'd said he had to get home after New Year's Eve for something, and asks if he's okay to stay longer. Taking it at face value, Yamamoto says sorry for the trouble and leaves for home. Yoshio wishes him a happy new year, and turns to See as she begins to stir. When See wakes, she asks in a panic if he's okay and where Destiny is. Yoshio calms her, showing he's unharmed and saying she dozed off after arriving at his place. Wanting to keep her out of the mess, he convinces her she had a bad dream. She agrees, saying he wouldn't be fine if it were real, and thinks Destiny was part of the dream too, not noticing it sitting on Yoshi's head. Then she recalls she needs to cook their next meal.